Chapter 1052. You want to leave now? Have you asked for my opinion? Hearing that these people wanted to leave, Han Fei didn't want to. Arrows rained down and the sky was full of arrows. These arrows were not only aimed at Emofan, but also at Chu Qinyan, Yang Nanshi, and Sun Wu. However, after Yang Nanshi left the battlefield, she spun, holding the two sledgehammers like a storm. Chu Qinyan and Sun Wu hid in the storm immediately. But Emofan couldn't leave. Han Fei was chasing him, and he couldn't flash infinitely like Han Fei. At this moment, he was in danger. If it weren't for the fact that the six-winged contractual spirit beast was entangled with the Emo clan's water dragon roar, it would have been killed long ago. At this moment Emofan roared, "Help me!" The sacrificing punch hit Yang Nanshi's storm sledgehammers like a dragon. The scene was like a nuclear explosion, and the shock waves spread out for dozens of kilometers. The three of them directly ran dozens of kilometers away with the help of Han Fei's power. Han Fei's eyes were cold. Yang Nanshi was indeed very strong. Even in this state, she could withstand the sacrificing punch. However, Emofan was desperate. A flash of light pierced through the void and fell directly on his shoulder. The great sky swallowing technique swallowed the air, causing him to pause. No. Swish. 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 Bam. 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 Countless arrows exploded, and even though Emofan was powerful, he was crushed in an instant. Han Fei glanced at Chu Qinyan and the others who had fled, and his heart was calm. At this moment, he was not in his strongest state. Because there was no concept of spiritual energy here, the concept of the use of spiritual energy was actually not in the most perfect state. Therefore, the bonus power after Han Fei's spiritual energy split couldn't be reflected. Otherwise, the power would be much stronger. Luo Xiaobai didn't choose to recover immediately but shouted, "Han Fei, deactivate the secret technique." Zhang Xuanyu also looked solemn. "Fei, deactivate it quickly." Lu Renquang also shouted. They ran away. "There's no need to fight." Han Fei looked down at them, and then looked back at the heavenly red hibiscus and the heavenly vine. Now he was at his peak, and Luo Xiaobai was injured, so Lu Renquang couldn't get close to the heavenly red hibiscus. A trace of fanaticism appeared in Han Fei's eyes, and he shouted in a low voice, I'll climb the mountain. You help me." Here, apart from Han Fei, Zhang Xuanyu was the only one with the strongest soul power. At this moment, when Zhang Xuanyu heard Han Fei's words, he was shocked. Now? Han Fei stepped out and rushed straight at the heavenly red hibiscus. It was so fast that Zhang Xuanyu and the others felt their scalps go numb. Luo Xiaobai's expression changed. "Zhang Xuanyu, his secret technique is very dangerous. We can't let him use it again." Zhang Xuanyu gritted his teeth. "Do I look like I can control him?" "Alright." Regardless of whether he could control it or not, he had to try. Zhang Xuanyu ran up the mountain, but a divine soul barrier appeared on the surface of his body. Chu Qinyan and the others who had just run away had ugly expressions on their faces. As they retreated, they would occasionally look back. Finally, Chu Qinyan took a deep breath. Emofan probably won't be able to come back. Sun Wu's face was ugly. Something was wrong with Han Fei's technique. His God-sealing and God-suppressing abilities had no effect on him at all. Neither the erosion of the purple sand nor the corrosion of the weak water could shake his soul. He was 100% sure that it was the art of invincibility. Chu Qinyan nodded. "Not only your technique is ineffective, but even my power of time is ineffective on him. This is an extremely dangerous person. Also, the secret technique he is using now is extremely evil and cannot be defeated by force." Yang Nanshi sniffed. "I underestimated them. That fatty is not simple. He actually completely resisted my power. By the way, his contractual spiritual beast should really be a legendary one." The hearts of the three of them sank slightly, and Chu Qinyan said, "Ordinary methods are no longer effective on them. Later, Tell those who are not heavenly talents are not allowed to find trouble with these people, especially Han Fei. Outside the demonic plant soul realm, there were many people gathered at this moment. However, these people were discussing because the ranking on the stone tablet had changed. Han Fei's name was directly branded at the 35th place, which was quite shocking. At this moment, someone said, "I witnessed the whole process. Is there anyone who wants to buy intelligence?" Someone sneered. "The ranking has already been ranked. Why would you buy intelligence?" The man said contemptuously, "Do you know who climbed the mountain?" In the crowd, someone responded, "Is there a need to guess? It's none other than those from the Thug Academy." So many people from the big families went in. Someone saw Chu Qinyan, Yang Nanshi, and the others also go in. Even a fool knows what's going on. The person who wanted to sell intelligence was embarrassed and full of helplessness. It seems that everyone knows. At this moment, someone was standing in the crowd, murmuring in his heart, "How can Han Fei and the others be so fast?" And Wang Santai, who had already changed into another person, couldn't help but feel excited. The Thug Academy is really strong. How long has it been since they separated? Has he already been ranked on the stone tablet? This means that he has at least flattened a mountain. I just don't know which one it is. At this moment, someone rushed out of the forest. Seeing so many people, he was shocked at first and then cursed. "Are you all watching the souls here? I have important intelligence. It involves the Thug Academy and the big families. Who wants to buy it?" Wang Santai immediately said with a smile, "Do I need you to tell me this intelligence? We already know it." The man frowned and said in surprise, "You all know that Han Fei cut the 9-headed snake grass?" Suddenly, the group of people suddenly realized something. "Oh, so this is the mountain they climbed?" The man said coldly, "The Thug Academy and the big families have already started a war. Some of them will definitely die this time. If you stay here, aren't you afraid that someone will come out later and kill you in anger? Those people have the visualization fossils in their hands." The crowd was a little moved. However, no one left. Which idiot would use the visualization fossils to attack a passerby? Wasn't that a waste? Several hours later, when Yang Nanshi took the lead and came out with the sledgehammer, someone immediately cried out, and then a group of people ran away. However, at this moment, Wang Santai couldn't help but look back. He only saw Yang Nanshi, Chu Qinyan, and Sun Wu. He couldn't see anyone else. At that time, his heart was agitated. Where did Mo Fan go? In the soul realm. Thousands of knives rolled up like a long dragon, trying to cut off the heavenly red hibiscus. But as it turned out, how could there be such a simple thing in the world? The heavenly red hibiscus was not just a coquettish flower. Han Fei dispersed the pollen and saw the flower that had not fully bloomed high in the sky. The petals stretched, revealing what was in the petals. There were thousands upon thousands of thin stamens and pistils, and the stamen in the center bloomed at the top and began to spew a huge amount of pollen. Where was the pollen? It was clearly a fist-sized red fruit, bright red and beautiful, making people want to take a bite. However, both Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu changed their faces when they saw the red fruit. Those things swept towards Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu like missiles. Of course, they were mainly attacking Han Fei, because a soul storm had been set off around Zhang Xuanyu. Countless blood demon insects were collapsing, and Zhang Xuanyu was struggling to walk in the pollen. Han Fei shouted, "Be careful of the stamens." Bam! 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 The fruits were really like nuclear bombs, exploding in the air one after another with dazzling spark. Han Fei's fist mark rumbled, and Zhang Xuanyu's spear shot out, but the latter roared, "Fei! This flower is a bit fierce. Let's retreat first." Han Fei ignored him. Although this fruit was powerful, he was at his peak at the moment and didn't panic at all. He was still sprinting towards the center of the heavenly red hibiscus. Swish! Swish! At this moment, thousands of transparent veins seemed to appear in the air. Vaguely, Han Fei felt the demon purification pot shake slightly. As soon as Han Fei stepped out of the soul-driving array, he saw transparent veins trying to fall on him. Humph! Control? The moment Han Fei released the void lines, the heavenly red hibiscus gave up on Zhang Xuanyu, and the overwhelming blood demon insects and red fruits rushed towards Han Fei. Han Fei didn't panic. The million-knife art formed a blade storm, spinning around him. Oh! Han Fei launched the sacrificing punch at him. Wherever it passed, the red fruits exploded one after another, and the blood demon insects were directly crushed into nothingness. Even so, the sacrificing punch failed to break through the distance of 500 meters. At the foot of the mountain, Lu Renkuang swallowed frantically. Is this a flower? Luo Xiaobai's eyes flickered. Will the blue cannibal flower become such a spiritual plant in the future? Isn't it a bit too strong? They had all seen Han Fei's sacrificing punch. It was so powerful that ordinary heavenly talents couldn't even resist it with a single punch and would be blasted into nothingness. But on this mountain, it was crushed after being blasted for less than 500 meters. Zhang Xuanyu shouted, "Soul explosion, explosion, explosion." 3 consecutive soul explosions were accompanied by a void spear light. A petal of the heavenly red hibiscus fell, not only blocking the soul explosion but also shattering almost at the same time as the void spear light. Zhang Xuanyu almost vomited blood. What kind of perverted demonic plant is this? A single petal can stop me to this extent? Are you looking down on me, old Zhang? Zhang Xuanyu took the opportunity to rush all the way to the middle of the mountain and burst the 3-leaf petal. Finally, the blood demon insect returned. But only a small part of it returned. Because Han Fei was also sprinting, he was a greater threat and faster than Zhang Xuanyu. The heavenly red hibiscus chose to deal with Han Fei, and Han Fei's figure flashed in the sky, leaving countless afterimages. At this moment, a big void hand grabbed at the center of the stamen. Chilla! All of a sudden, 3 leaves blocked in the air. Explode! The petals collapsed, and so did the phantom of the big hand. But after using the infinity water, Han Fei launched another sacrificing punch. The heavenly red hibiscus suddenly emitted a strange fragrance. At that moment, the black mist on Han Fei's body kept rising. The corners of his mouth became sinister, and he let out a low and evil voice. Ha ha! Do you think a few petals can stop me? The heavenly red hibiscus didn't know Han Fei's current state. The flower fragrance was supposed to confuse the mind, but the heavenly red hibiscus didn't expect that Han Fei would become more and more violent. At this moment, 2 kinds of luster rose on Han Fei's body. One was a black mist, and the other was a dazzling golden light, like the first light of dawn. The golden light shone on the darkness. However, the golden light failed to break the darkness. Instead, it became even more evil. Some of the void lines were attached to the transparent veins, and some were attached to the petals. A big black hand, spanning 100 meters, grabbed at the heavenly red hibiscus. Even the red fruit couldn't explode, and more than 30 petals were directly crushed. The 4th chapter. Please vote end of this chapter. Chapter 1053. When Han Fei cast this big black hand, the heavenly red hibiscus completely gave up on Zhang Xuanyu. Luo Xiaobai had already stood up, her face dark. Is this a sign of being possessed? Lu Renkuang's face shivered. Possessed? What does it mean? Luo Xiaobai took a breath. It's said that cultivators cultivate against the heavens, fight against the sea, and absorb the righteous spirit of heaven and earth. Even if their temperament is problematic, at least they are on the right path. However, becoming a demonic cultivator seemed to be walking a different path, fighting against the heavens and earth, breaking away from the spiritual veins of heaven and earth. Although you can obtain extremely powerful strength, once you fall into this path, I'm afraid that your temperament will change greatly. Lu Renkuang asked anxiously, Is there any other way? Luo Xiaobai shook her head slightly. It depends on Han Fei. Look, he has the art of invincibility, so his demonic nature can't be completely possessed. This is a good thing. Lu Renkuang swallowed. I think he's going crazy. Is this a good thing? Zhang Xuanyu looked at this scene in a daze halfway up the mountain. He thought to himself, what kind of secret method is Han Fei using? It even makes my heart palpitate. Not to mention Zhang Xuanyu, even the heavenly vines on the central mountain were moving. In the clouds and mist, there were green vines hovering. Although they didn't fall directly, they were already ready to move. In the sky, Han Fei rushed all the way like a black and golden shadow, smashing a large number of exploding fruit. Behind Han Fei, there was a large mass of black mist. In the mist, there were scarlet eyes and a big open mouth, which looked extremely terrifying. The 10,000 transparent stamen veins of the heavenly red hibiscus frantically stretched out towards Han Fei. However, Han Fei tilted his head slightly, and light rushed out of his black and white eyes. A large number of transparent veins exploded. Han Fei stretched out his hand again. Seeing that the heavenly red hibiscus was unable to resist, 3 green vines fell from the sky and whipped at Han Fei. Han Fei suddenly raised his head, grinned, and said coldly, "Get lost!" He punched out with a sacrificing punch and slashed at the void with the draw technique. 2 green vines exploded, and Han Fei raised his hands, and 2 big black hands appeared in the void. Han Fei grabbed the 3rd vine and used his terrifying strength to block it, smashing it directly towards the heavenly red hibiscus. Bang! Pollen filled the sky, flowers and leaves scattered everywhere, as if they were weaving pieces of red silk in the void. The heavenly red hibiscus was finally defeated in a single strike. However, at this time, another green vine fell. It was so fast that it whipped Han Fei and sent him flying dozens of kilometers away. From the right side of the mountain to the left side. Boom! The 9-headed snake grass was still recovering when a nuclear bomb came crashing down. The small piece of rhizome that had just grown out was directly smashed into pieces. On top of the mountain, dust billowed and gravel flew everywhere. Zhang Xuanyu shuddered and saw a red fruit falling from the sky. Without any hesitation, Zhang Xian scooped him up and dashed toward the right side of the mountain. Zhang Xuanyu roared, "Fei Fei! That's enough, that's enough. Let's attack the last one together." In the sky, the void steel reappeared, and Han Fei's name jumped straight up from 35th to 12th. Perhaps it was because of Zhang Xuanyu's participation in the battle, but his name also appeared in the void, wanting to be branded in the 100th place. However, they were all blocked by the stone steel every single time. In the end, he failed to go up. But Zhang Xuanyu was in no mood to care about this. Even Luo Xiaobai and Lu Renkuang were rushing to the top of the mountain. They had to stop Han Fei and prevent him from being possessed. But before the 3 of them ran over, they saw the mountain where the 9-headed snake grass was suddenly exploded. Han Fei, covered in black, rushed directly to the mountain in the center. Zhang Xuanyu cursed, "F***CK, you're still coming?" Lu Renkuang shouted, "Send me over." Luo Xiaobai grabbed Lu Renkuang with her vines and smashed him to the center. In the air, Lu Renkuang roared, sky-swallowing technique. However, as soon as the big hole appeared, Han Fei flashed and flew far away. Lu Renkuang was dumbfounded. Too slow, too slow. Send me again." But Luo Xiaobai half knelt on the ground and couldn't move. She was still seriously injured. The 3 of them could only watch Han Fei rush to the most central mountain like a lunatic, with the black fog behind him. In the next moment, there was a roar on the central mountain. A large number of heavenly vines fell like dancing green snakes, like willows hanging in the sky. Outside, Chu Qingyan and the others didn't leave. Instead, many people from the big clans had gathered. Yang Nanshi had been staring at the stone tablet for a long time. Suddenly, Han Fei's name flickered with golden light and jumped directly to the 12th place. Immediately, Yang Nanshi screamed, "He has broken through the 2nd mountain." Chu Qingyan and Sun Wu frowned. Among the top 10 heavenly talents, Yang Nanshi ranked the highest in the demonic plant soul realm. It was not that no one could break through a mountain alone, but it might take a long time without assistance. And there was no one as efficient as Han Fei. In a sense, it already showed that among the peak-level hidden fishers, even Jiang Nanyu, who ranked first among the top 10 heavenly talents, was no match for Han Fei. This idea directly stimulated Chu Qinyan. Han Fei was a body cultivator, but he shouldn't be so strong, right? That stone tablet was filled with names that had been accumulated over thousands of years. With a swish, Han Fei jumped to the 12th place. Was he really so talented? At this moment, in the depths of the demonic plant soul realm, the mountain in the middle had been shrouded in a black mist, and only golden fist marks could be seen constantly blasting out. Occasionally, Han Fei was smashed into the ground, and often, giant vines were blown up. Luo Xiaobai and the others even saw Han Fei forcibly tear off a giant vine, which traversed thousands of meters away. Bam! A chubby figure was directly slapped out and rolled dozens of times on the ground before Zhang Xuanyu caught him. Lu Renkuang was covered in dust and vomited a mouthful of blood. I can't beat him. Zhang Xuanyu swallowed. It seems that we can't participate in this battle either. Luo Xiaobai nodded. It's up to him. If the four of us work together, even this heavenly vine may have a chance. It's just that he is not in a good state at the moment. While they were talking, on the mountain, in the black mist, Han Fei's body was shining with golden light, and he bared his teeth. It was no longer the blood-drinking knife, but the small yin-yang wheel. That was not the combination technique of little black and little white, but the million-knife art turned into a small yin-yang wheel. Green vines broke through the void, bursting out violent cracking sounds in the air. The black mist behind Han Fei surged, and the green vines were blocked as if they had been slapped into water. Han Fei took the opportunity to cut off the green vines with snowmorn. Under the influence of the black mist, the green vines seemed to be a little wilted. Han Fei took the opportunity to attack crazily, cutting off the green vines one after another. At this moment, his target was the main trunk of the heavenly vine, which was made of countless green vines intertwined. Han Fei punched the main trunk of the heavenly vine, and the infinity water seeped into it. Boom! 5 or 6 main trunks of the heavenly vine were blown up. And it was because the infinity water exploded from the inside that so much of it was blown up. If it were under normal circumstances, Han Fei's sacrificing punch could blow up one vine at most. Subconsciously, Han Fei had a weird thought, which was to cancel the fusion of little black and little white. At that moment, Han Fei realized that something was wrong. After little black and little white fused, he should be in an absolutely calm state. But after fighting for a long time from Tian Hongjin to here, he just realized that he was not calm. At this moment, Han Fei directly suppressed that thought. This Demon King's contract was weird. Was it trying to guide him? Without the state of fusion, without the calmness created by the yin-yang divine eyes, his mind would be easily taken away. However, although Han Fei realized it, he still didn't want to touch the Demon King's contract. Because the dawn of victory was already right in front of him. Taking advantage of this seemingly sober moment, Han Fei directly tied the needless thread to the heavenly vine. He crawled into the hole that was blown up. In the eyes of Luo Xiaobai and the others, suddenly, golden light burst out from the trunk of the green vine from time to time. It exploded more than 10 times in a row. In the clouds, the giant vine began to pour down like a tower. Lu Renkuang's eyes widened. Did we win? Zhang Xuanyu suddenly pointed to the sky. Look at the black mist. The black mist began to condense into a claw mark, as if something was trying to stretch out of the mist. Luo Xiaobai didn't care so much and pointed to the void. Grand Spirit Summoning Art. Then, Luo Xiaobai disappeared and quickly rushed to the Black Mist Mountain through the vines and spiritual plant. Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renkuang knew that it was not good and quickly rushed over. and Han Fei seemed particularly irritable at this moment, as if something wanted to drill out of his body. Han Fei, watch your back. Fei, don't just stand there behind. Sky swallowing technique. As soon as Lu Renkuang used the sky swallowing technique, the black claw suddenly paused. But it only paused for a moment and then slowly stretched out towards Han Fei, but at a slower speed. Momentary time, third level of the sea shaking technique. The spear light shook and fell on the black mist, but it didn't even cause a ripple and directly sank into it. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai had already appeared on the fallen green vine, clasping at Han Fei with the vines. Han Fei, wake up. In the chaos, Han Fei saw a void of darkness. In the darkness there was a huge black shadow staring at him. Scarlet eyes, a big twisted mouth. An extremely low and hoarse voice sounded. Give up struggling and you will get all my strength. Han Fei's eyes were cold, one black and one white, staring straight at that pair of eyes. Who are you? The voice laughed and said, I am the embodiment of power, I am eternal darkness. I can help you find the great way and become a king. Dad, suddenly, Han Fei's left eye moved, and a call came from the spiritual world. Han Fei looked back, but there was nothing around him. Where was he? Han Fei, wake up. Fei, I can't absorb this thing. Fei, son of AB*TCH, what are you waiting for? Han Fei raised his hands and saw that his palms were full of black gas. He seemed to realize something. Deactivate. Han Fei frowned. I can't deactivate it. Ha, what's wrong with being possessed? You will gain infinite power. That is the real invincible, above all living beings. Swish. All of a sudden, a golden light shone into the void. It was a golden page that floated in the void. Oh. Ha, you can't escape the desire for power. We will meet again. The black mist dissipated, and in the eyes of Luo Xiaobai and the others, a page fell from the sky. The golden light dispelled the darkness, and the black claws were melting. And Han Fei fell straight down. 5th chapter. Asking for monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1054. When Han Fei woke up again and opened his eyes, he found Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renkuang's two big heads in front of him. Hey, what are you doing? Han Fei shivered and quickly pushed the two heads away. I'm not gay. When he pushed the two of them, Han Fei found that he was holding a golden page in his hand. He couldn't help but be curious. What is this? He got up and saw that Luo Xiaobai was recovering next to him. Han Fei's face suddenly changed. How is Xiaobai? Zhang Xuanyu stretched out his hand and waved it in front of Han Fei's eyes. Hey, do you remember what you just did? Han Fei was stunned, thought for a moment, and his face darkened. I went to kill the big red flower. Wait. Han Fei was taken aback. You still want to? Han Fei turned his head and found that the heavenly vine was gone. The big green vine was lying on the ground, not far away, broken. Han Fei said with a weird look, I killed it? Lu Renkuang nodded quickly. You just realized it? He couldn't even catch up to you, so you just went over and beat him up. You broke his arm. Han Fei wondered what the hell was the Demon King's contract he used? For some reason, a huge monster in the void appeared in his mind, as well as the spreading black fog. Zhang Xuanyu asked, What do you remember? Han Fei's face darkened. What happened just now? Lu Renkuang immediately whined. You didn't see the scene just now. A whole mountain was occupied by you. A big claw thousands of meters long stretched out from the darkness. My sea god, the heavenly vine couldn't even touch you. Lu Renkuang added fuel to the fire, saying how Han Fei was blackened at that time and wouldn't listen to him no matter how he shouted, like an ancient ferocious beast from some corner. Han Fei listened to Lu Renkuang's description in a daze and his heart sank. He had wanted to teach them the devil change. But now it seemed that there was more to it than meets the eye. What the hell was that monster? It seemed to tell him that it would give him infinite power? Do I need you to give it to me? Immediately, Han Fei said with a straight face, and Zhang Xuanyu rolled his eyes. What else do you want? Was he really going to let that thing escape? Forget about you, the four of us will play together. Oh, there's one more thing. A giant stone tablet appeared in the void. Your name, with a whoosh, ran to the first place. Then, this thing fell from the sky. Quang and I have been looking at it for a long time, but we don't understand it. Zhang Xuanyu pointed at the golden page in Han Fei's hand curiously. Han Fei quickly looked down, only to find that it was a piece of golden paper. There was something written on it, but he didn't recognize it at all. Or was it not words on the paper, but a kind of symbol? Han Fei didn't look like one either. It was more like something very complicated and rhythmic. As he looked at it, he found that the paper was melting. Zhang Xuanyu, hey! Why is it gone? Lu Renquang said. They all ran into Han Fei's body. The golden paper turned into a faint golden light, submerged into Han Fei's palm, and finally disappeared without a trace. Han Fei was also dumbfounded. What's going on? I don't understand it either. Han Fei closed his eyes, trying to see if there was any display in his mind. After all, every time he encountered this kind of situation, he just needed to see the demon purification pot's reaction. But this time there was nothing. At the very least, old Han's divination art had a hint. This golden page was clearly a book page, but it didn't show anything, which puzzled Han Fei. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai slowly opened her eyes and looked at Han Fei. You're awake? Han Fei chuckled. Yes. Luo Xiaobai asked, what secret method did you use? In the ancient battlefield, you used the majestic mystic spell. Later, the secret method seemed to have changed. Han Fei grinned. I got it in the Sky City in the Underground City. Luo Xiaobai frowned. You were almost possessed just now. If it weren't for the sudden golden light, you might have been possessed. Han Fei couldn't help frowning. Sure enough, the Demon King's contract couldn't be used casually. He should have known it when he deduced it. But just now, he couldn't help it and almost killed himself. Han Fei remembered that in this ideal palace, no matter what happened, he must never use the Demon King's contract again. In terms of pure strength, neither Chu Qinyan nor Yang Nanshi were stronger than him. However, there were too many of them, which was a problem. Han Fei asked, Do you know what it's like to be possessed? Luo Xiaobai shook her head. I don't know, but on the night of Tang Ji's wedding, Grandpa Ku told me. Han Fei asked, What did he say? Luo Xiaobai looked a little strange. She said, Grandpa Ku said that Ren Tianfei was possessed. Wow. Han Fei immediately gasped. No. Wait a minute, are you sure? Luo Xiaobai nodded slightly. I didn't say that, but the masters of the big families in the Thousand-Star City said so. It was the Venerable. Zhang Xuanyu said in surprise, the one who protects our Thug Academy. Lu Renquang took a breath and said, I don't think so. The big families call him a devil, but it doesn't mean that he has really been possessed. If he has been possessed, doesn't it mean that our Thug Academy is related to the devil? Han Fei said angrily, T. Do you think the Venerable is right? Especially those venerables in the Thousand-Star City, they can't stand the Thug Academy. Luo Xiaobai said, No, Grandpa Ku said that my father said that Ren Tianfei had no meridians in his body. It is said that he went crazy and broke all the meridians in his body. Han Fei was suspicious. You call this being possessed? It's just that he has no meridians. Is it a big problem? Luo Xiaobai widened her eyes. Meridians are the law of nature and the law of heaven. If a person has no meridians, he will definitely die. But he didn't. Not only is he fine, but he even broke the physical barrier and is extremely powerful. Only by going against the law of heaven and cultivating unorthodox methods can he have such a strange situation. Therefore, the Venerable once said that Ren Tianfei has been possessed. Lu Renquang and Zhang Xuanyu gasped. What she said seemed to make sense. Zhang Xuanyu was dumbfounded. His meridians are gone? Is his spiritual heritage also gone? Lu Renkuang swallowed. So non-mainstream? Han Fei said disdainfully, so he has been possessed? This evaluation is too disrespectful to those who have been possessed, isn't it? Alas, shouldn't it be the arrival of a great devil with mountains of corpses and seas of blood? With a wave of his hand, the law of heaven collapses. With a stomp of his foot, the sea surges. Then, in anger, he points to the sky and curses, "Damn heaven!" Luo Xiaobai and the other two looked at Han Fei strangely. Zhang Xuanyu said leisurely, Fei, are you describing a demon or a king? I think a king should be like this. Lu Renkuang nodded quickly. I agree. Luo Xiaobai shook her head and said, Anyway, you can't use that secret method. I think the majestic mystic spell is good. Your current secret method is extremely dangerous. What you did just now was almost infuriating. Lu Renkuang and Zhang Xuanyu nodded again and again, thinking that Han Fei was better. They really couldn't resist what he did just now. Han Fei scratched his head. Hey, I won't use it again. Seeing Han Fei's attitude, the three of them all breathed a sigh of relief. Luo Xiaobai changed the topic. Take advantage of this period of time to digest these soul fruits. I ate one before and I feel that this soul fruit seems to be able to break through the soul barrier. Zhang Xuanyu immediately said, Yes, I forgot to mention that this soul fruit is too effective. I feel that if I eat a few more, my soul barrier will be broken. Zhang Xuanyu quickly took out a total of 7 red shiny fruit. Lu Renkuang also quickly took out a green fruit and said, Don't blame me. That big green vine only has 1 fruit. Han Fei was a little surprised. Such an awesome big green vine only has 1 fruit? How stingy! However, Han Fei glanced around and his surroundings changed immediately. In his eyes, information emerged. Name Destiny Soul Fruit Introduction, a strange fruit that grows in the Void Soul realm. Eating it can break the spiritual barrier. Level None Quality, Natural Spiritual Item, Effect Destiny Soul Fruit, Inherited Soul Line, can help to break the spiritual barrier by force, but is ineffective for explorers. Han Fei's eyes immediately turned green. Isn't this what I want? This is King good stuff. Immediately, Han Fei also took out 7 ultra-quality soul fruits and threw them to Lu Renkuang. Give this to me and the rest are yours. Luo Xiaobai asked in surprise, Do you know this soul fruit? Han Fei was taken aback. I don't know it, but I feel that it is very compatible with me. Luo Xiaobai acquiesced. This feeling was very wonderful. It was not a problem to say so. However, Luo Xiaobai said, But this is too much. We don't need so many. In addition to the Destiny Soul Fruit in Han Fei's hand, there were still 14 ultra-quality soul fruits left. Luo Xiaobai felt that 3 of them were enough to break the spiritual barrier. She and Zhang Xuanyu had already eaten one, and there might be 6 or 7 left. Han Fei immediately smiled and said, You have to see what kind of place this is. This is the ideal palace. Our existences are all soul bodies. This is only the first soul realm. There will be 6 more of such soul realms. I heard that each one is more difficult than the last. Since these soul fruits are so useful, they must be useful. In this way we can digest them here. Break the spiritual barrier, and then we can go out. Lu Renkuang nodded fiercely. Yes, only 4 of the top 10 heavenly talents have come, and it's already so difficult. If all of them come, we can't deal with them. Zhang Xuanyu took a breath. Do you think they are waiting for us at the door? While Han Fei and the others were discussing, they didn't know that the outside world was in chaos. On the void stone tablet, golden light flashed, and Han Fei ranked first. This was simply unprecedented, not to mention a rare occurrence in hundreds of thousands of years. It could be said that those who saw it were dumbfounded and those who heard it were shocked. Chapter 1055. For Luo Xiaobai and the others, although they had many opportunities, they hadn't been able to perceive more than 50 kilometers. The one with the weakest perception range was Lu Renquang, only more than 30 kilometers. It didn't mean that a smaller perception range was weaker. In contrast, Lu Renquang's perception range was already very large, and some peak-level hidden fishers didn't even have a perception range of 10 kilometers. Luo Xiaobai and the others were swallowing ultra-quality soul fruits at this moment, but Han Fei didn't. At this time, he had to be absolutely safe. Otherwise, once someone else came in, the consequences would be unpredictable. Maybe it was because they were souls, but the effect of swallowing the ultra-quality soul fruit this time was surprisingly fast. In less than half an hour, Luo Xiaobai and Zhang Xuanyu each woke up once. Even Lu Renquang didn't take more than half an hour. After absorbing the first ultra-quality soul fruit, Lu Renquang looked at Han Fei and said in surprise, "Fei, I feel that my perception should have increased a lot." Although he couldn't release his perception in this ideal palace, he could clearly feel the enhancement of his soul. If Lu Renquang said it had increased a lot, then it must be a lot. After all, Lu Renquang's perception range was small. Han Fei said, "Continue to eat until it can't increase anymore." Han Fei couldn't help but think, if ultra-quality soul fruits can enhance the power of the soul so much, then what about my heavenly soul fruit? If I can break the barrier of the soul, then what will it be like after that? An hour later. Gotcha. In the void, there was the sound of laws cracking. Zhang Xuanyu opened his eyes first. At this moment, a shadow appeared in Zhang Xuanyu's eyes. It seemed that he had broken the barrier. Zhang Xuanyu sighed leisurely. Four soul fruits, I feel that my soul has almost doubled. Crazy, this ideal palace is too abnormal. Han Fei was shocked. How much? Zhang Xuanyu chuckled. Double. Maybe not that much, but it's not much different. Han Fei said, "Don't talk. Let's wait for Xiaobai and the others to finish." Luo Xiaobai also ate 4 soul fruits, and just 100 minutes later, she broke the barrier. The moment she opened her eyes, Luo Xiaobai said, "I thought it would take 3 soul fruits to break the barrier, but I underestimated it." Han Fei asked, "How is the effect?" Luo Xiaobai thought for a moment. "A lot. The effect of this soul fruit is beyond my expectations. Although I can't release my perception here, I think it might be close to 50 kilometers. Zhang Xuanyu said happily, "I think so too." Unlike Zhang Xuanyu and Luo Xiaobai, Lu Renquang didn't seem to have a physique suitable for cultivating the soul. Up until now, he had only eaten the 3rd soul fruit before he broke through the barrier. However, after Lu Renquang opened his eyes, he laughed ecstatically. "Ha ha ha, the shortcoming of my soul has finally been made up. You might not believe me when I say this, but my perception range is definitely 60 kilometers. Yes, definitely." Han Fei patted Lu Renquang's shoulder awkwardly. "As long as you're happy. Come, protect me." Lu Renquang was stunned to see Han Fei's expression. He looked at Zhang Xuanyu. "What's wrong with him?" Zhang Xuanyu looked up at the sky. "It's nothing. You've made great progress." Luo Xiaobai said, "You're too weak. I'm about 100 kilometers away. With the help of spirit plants, he might be able to travel even further. Zhang Xuanyu's perception should be farther than mine." Lu Renquang was stunned. Han Fei had already sat cross-legged, and without hesitation, he stuffed the Destiny Soul fruit into his mouth. After swallowing the source water in the sea-quelling painting, after more than a year of cultivation, until Tang Ji's wedding, his soul power hadn't increased. It could be seen how difficult it was to break the barrier of his soul. It could be seen that the source water was only a one-time expansion of his soul. It was even possible that Han Fei had obtained the soul strength of a law enforcer in advance. Han Fei glanced at the Destiny Soul fruit and said to himself, "It's up to you." Han Fei opened his mouth and stuffed the Destiny Soul fruit into his mouth. At that moment, The airwaves around Han Fei surged, and the Zhang Xuanyu trio couldn't help but take a few steps back. Zhang Xuanyu said in surprise, "How strong is Han Fei's soul? Why did he have such a big reaction to eating a fruit?" Luo Xiaobai nodded. "It should be because the fruit is extraordinary." Well, the moment the Destiny Soul fruit was swallowed, Han Fei only felt a tremor all over his body, and his body naturally glowed with golden light. His physique was raised to the strongest state, as if his body had been filled with energy. It was a completely different feeling from when he digested the soul bead before. Perhaps because Han Fei was now a soul, Han Fei felt that the soul power in the Destiny Soul fruit was dissipating into his limbs and bones. At the same time, an invisible barrier like a wall of nothingness appeared where the heavenly soul fruit converged. A massive amount of soul power, like a tide, rushed here wave after wave. If it was just the impact, it would be fine, but there seemed to be an invisible knife in the impact force, trying to break the barrier. Bam! In the eyes of the Luo Xiaobai trio, Han Fei's body was shaking almost every second. Every time it shook, it would stir up the dust around it. Lu Renkuang exclaimed, "What's going on? Is Han Fei breathing?" Lu Renkuang's eyes were strange. "No, he seems to be hitting the barrier. He must have reached the barrier a long time ago." So, after taking the soul fruit, he directly began to break the barrier. Luo Xiaobai asked, "But is this barrier so strong?" Zhang Xuanyu was lost in thought. It seemed that Han Fei's soul was much stronger than his. If Han Fei got a soul battle technique, how could ordinary people be a match for him? Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help but say enviously, "Han Fei's body is so strong, and his soul is also so strong. It doesn't make sense." Little did the three of them know that at this moment, Han Fei felt that his head was about to explode. Every time he hit the barrier, he felt as if he had been slashed by a knife. Han Fei was speechless. It seemed that it was quite easy for Luo Xiaobai and the others to break the barrier. Why is it so difficult for me? Is it because the heavens are jealous of the geniuses? Han Fei put aside these ominous thoughts and thought to himself, maybe Zhang Xuanyu and the others also hit the barrier just now. Han Fei didn't panic at all. When he was practicing the indestructible body art, when he was struck by lightning, and when Snowmorn recognized him as its master, which time wasn't more dangerous than now. On the contrary, Han Fei felt that the power of slashing the barrier was still within his tolerance range. Half an hour later, Han Fei could clearly feel that the barrier seemed to be a little loose. He felt that he was only one step away from crossing the barrier. Cut it! Thud! The sound was as muffled as thunder. A big vortex was set off next to Han Fei, directly blowing away the surrounding vegetation. At that moment, Han Fei felt that the whole world was clear. When he opened his eyes, he could see hundreds of kilometers away. His ears could hear everything. His sense of smell was doubled, and everything around him was much clearer. The moment Lu Renkuang's head leaned over, Han Fei felt that he was in slow motion. A pig's head slowly stretched over. Fei, how are you?" Han Fei suddenly stood up. But the moment he stood up, Han Fei was slightly surprised. Because his mind had already risen, but his body was a step slower. Well, Han Fei immediately looked at the demon purification pot. Owner Han Fei, level greater than 61, Junior Law Enforcer, Spiritual Energy 432-5681-48621, Spiritual Power 10999/10999, Perception Range greater than 501 km, Law Enforcer Invincible Strength 4 waves, First Spiritual Heritage Level 7, Low Quality Second Spiritual Heritage Unawakened, First Spiritual Beast Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish Level 57, Second Spiritual Beast Unawakened Main Art Divine Manipulation Technique Level 5 of Void Fishing, Heaven Level, Divine. Quality. Seeing Han Fei's weird look, Luo Xiaobai couldn't help asking, "What's wrong?" Han Fei was too familiar with this feeling. No, to be precise, this feeling was strange, but similar situations had happened before. When he became a hidden fisher and swallowed the spirit-awakening fluid crazily, his body became uncoordinated because his strength increased too fast. But this time, it had nothing to do with his body, but his reaction. His mind was faster than his body. Han Fei paused and said, "You poke me with momentary time." Zhang Xuanyu felt that he had heard wrong. What's wrong with Han Fei? He had never heard such a request in his life. Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help but ask, "Wait, can you dodge it?" Han Fei nodded. "Come on, you first." Lu Renkuang muttered, "Is he possessed? Did his brain get damaged during the breakthrough?" Zhang Xuanyu kept a distance from Han Fei and said, "Then I'm coming." Han Fei nodded. "Come on." Swish. Even in the face of Han Fei, Zhang Xuanyu wouldn't slack off. Zhang Xuanyu never spouted nonsense when it came to things that could be explained in a fight. When the spear stabbed at him, space and time were slightly distorted. If it were before, Han Fei wouldn't have had time to think about it because the time was too short. But now, Han Fei felt that he could grasp the fluctuations of that moment. His brain had dodged it, and his body was too slow to follow. However, he dodged it slightly. The spear was supposed to fall on Han Fei's shoulder, but it slipped slightly to the side, about an inch off the target. Zhang Xuanyu said in surprise, "Fei, you've become faster?" Luo Xiaobai seemed to understand something. "Your reaction speed is faster than your body?" Han Fei chuckled and nodded in agreement. The Luo Xiaobai Trio. Chapter 1056. Even Luo Xiaobai was inexplicably envious of Han Fei's experience at this moment. His spiritual reaction exceeded Han Fei's physical speed, which was something they had never expected. Was Han Fei's body weak? Was his speed slow? None of them. Han Fei wasn't slow at all. Everyone knew this. It could also be seen in the battle with the heavenly talent. It could even be said that in some extreme cases, Han Fei could even match Yi Baiyu's inhuman speed. Luo Xiaobai asked, "Do you want to get used to it? I don't know what will happen after we go out." Han Fei shook his head. "No, I'm just not used to it, but it won't affect my fighting ability." Han Fei looked back, only to find that the demonic plants that had been shattered on the 3 mountains were connected by threads in the air, as if they were slowly recovering. And on the 9-headed snake grass, half of a snake head had already grown out. Luo Xiaobai said, "After all, this is a strange soul space. Everything is possible. Maybe these demon plants are just scattered souls that are being repaired at this moment." Han Fei nodded. "Okay, let's go." Outside the demonic plant soul realm, the crowd had already dispersed, but they didn't go far. On the contrary, because of various news, more and more people came here. It wasn't until nearly 300 people from the big families came and occupied this place that the others retreated to the distance. Someone said, "This is not a small matter." Mo Fan went in and didn't come out. Someone sighed. "This Thug Academy is really crazy. With just 5 people, they dare to fight against the big families of the entire 1,000-star city." Someone sneered. "Anyway, no one will remember what happened here when they go out. I think they're doomed this time. If the 2 sides don't fight to the death, they won't be able to get out." Someone was puzzled. This big family is so powerful. It's said that they have several venerables. Why didn't they attack the Thug Academy outside? Why did they have to stay in the Ideal Palace? Their realms were suppressed. If they could, they would have done it long ago. Why did they wait until now? This shows that the Thug Academy must have some unknown trump card that prevents the big families from attacking them easily. Everyone nodded. This was the only explanation. In these people's opinion, the Thug Academy was probably in danger this time. You clearly know that others want to deal with you, yet you still want to enter the Ideal Palace? There were more than 300 peak-level hidden fishers here. If they really started killing, how could they withstand it? Just as everyone was discussing, suddenly, A few figures walked out of the pitch-black forest. If it wasn't them, who else could it be? In that instant, outside the monster plant's soul realm, more than 300 people entered battle mode. Seeing this scene, the four of them activated a secret method and fused with their spiritual beast. Chu Qingyan said coldly, "You should know that you won't be able to escape." Sun Wu gritted her teeth. "Han Fei, you must pay for my brother's life." Yang Nanshi carried the sledgehammer on her shoulder with one hand and pointed at Han Fei with the other. "I want to fight you." Han Fei twisted his head. "How annoying! Which of the 10 prodigies is here?" Han Fei decided that if Jiang Nanyu and Diwu Haiguang were among these people, he and Luo Xiaobai would have to run away. In other words, he could take the brunt of the attack and see how strong the other party was. With Lurenquang, a human shield, and him in front of them, they could do this. In the crowd, a girl suddenly jumped out, and her appearance changed in midair, surrounded by colorful colors. It was none other than Li Luoluo. Han Fei frowned. "Why are you still jumping in at this time?" Li Luoluo giggled. "Who am I? Since I joined the Thug Academy, I have to act like one." Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai looked at each other. In fact, they had privately discussed Li Luoluo's purpose in coming to the Thug Academy. As long as she wasn't a fool, she wouldn't choose to join the Thug Academy at this time for no reason. Others didn't know the stakes, but even if Li Luoluo didn't know the root cause, she could still make some inferences. But at this moment, at this critical moment, Li Luoluo actually chose to jump out? For this reason alone, no matter what Li Luoluo's purpose in coming to the Thug Academy was, they had to take it seriously. Of course, there was another possibility. Han Fei said, "Be careful. Be careful of Li Luoluo's sudden sneak attack." Because in the ideal palace, after they said it, their memories would disappear. Therefore, at this time, those who were still in contact with them were either sincere in helping them, or they had enmity and were deliberately helping them. Let's see what choice Li Luoluo would make next. Yang Nanshi curled her lips and said, "All 5 of you? I heard that there used to be a Xia Shaochan in the Thug Academy. She seemed to be quite powerful. Unfortunately, she seems to be dead. Why, did you find another one to replace her?" Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Yang Nanshi, remember to be careful next time you speak. Otherwise, don't blame me for only killing you." Yang Nanshi raised her head proudly. "Why don't you try?" Chu Qingyan glanced at Yang Nanshi, then looked at the people from the big clans, and finally looked at Han Fei. "Do you think 5 people can beat 300 people? Remember, those who can be here are not ordinary hidden fishers." Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "So, are there any other top 10 heavenly talents here?" Puff. A green vine drilled out of the ground. On the green vine, a big white flower bloomed. A young man in black walked out of the flower. The young man glanced at Han Fei and the others, and then looked at Chu Qingyan and the others. "You're not late, but there are a lot of people. Li Xian, don't hide. I saw you." Han Fei wondered, who is this? There was no need for an introduction. A person walked out of the opposite crowd. It was Li Xian, who Han Fei had met once, but he was not on the heavenly talent list. Li Xian smiled slightly. "Luo Jiutian, even you are here? Do you want the Luo family to have no successors?" Chu Qingyan said coldly. "Luo Jiutian, what do you think you can do?" Han Fei and the others couldn't help but look at Luo Xiaobai in surprise. Luo Xiaobai nodded slightly. "My brother." Zhang Xuanyu immediately grinned. "It's good to be a big clan. There are so many brothers and sisters." Han Fei grinned and said, "6th on the heavenly talent list. In this case, we have 6 masters on the heavenly talent list. Don't flatter yourself. You haven't entered the list yet." Han Fei sneered. "Does it make any difference whether I enter or not? If Mo Fan wasn't so annoying, you would have been the first one I killed." Luo Jiutian glanced at Han Fei and couldn't help but smile. "Arrogant enough," he continued, "who said that I'm the only one who came?" Everyone was puzzled. Except for someone from the Luo family who was willing to help the Thug Academy, who else could it be? Han Fei looked at Luo Xiaobai. Do you have two brothers? Luo Xiaobai's face was cold. Only one. A chuckle sounded from afar. I really don't mind having such a sister. It's my honor. The newcomer had a bow in his hand and was walking leisurely. He didn't look like he was here to fight, but more like hunting and sightseeing. This person's footsteps were slow, but he stepped on a teleportation array and appeared beside Luo Jiutian in the next second. Then he looked at Han Fei and the others and couldn't help but smile. I heard on the way here that you killed a Mo fan. Impressive, that kid is indeed annoying. Well done. Chu Qingyan gritted her teeth and said, Diwu Lingguang, is the Sea Cloud Tower also going to participate in this matter? Luo Xiaobai and the others were surprised. Why would the Sea Cloud Tower help the Thug Academy? Han Fei was also a little surprised. It seemed that the Thug Academy and the Sea Cloud Tower had nothing to do with each other, right? Diwu Lingguang waved his claws at Chu Qingyan. Long legs, we meet again. As he spoke, he put his hand under his nose and sniffed it, nodding solemnly. Yes, smells good. At that time, Chu Qingyan's face was extremely ugly. She thought to herself, this shameless bastard, I'll kill him sooner or later. Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu looked at each other and seemed to understand something. Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help but say leisurely, talent, role model. Diwu Lingguang looked back and chuckled. I'm ashamed. I still have to work hard. Zhang Xuanyu asked, how do you feel? Diwu Lingguang smiled and said, it's wonderful. It can only be understood but not explained. How dare you? Chu Qingyan couldn't hold it in anymore. How could she tolerate such frivolous flirting in front of her? As he spoke, the 1,000 whiskers emerged and grabbed at Diwu Lingguang. The latter turned his bow toward the sky and shot an arrow. Then, arrows fell like rain. Luo Jiutian's figure disappeared and appeared in front of a white flower beside Han Fei and the others. And in the rain of arrows, the 1,000-faced Buddha hands were all shattered. Diwu Lingguang stepped on a defensive array, grabbed the air with one hand, and caught a small glowing arrow. Swoosh! The arrow disappeared, but in front of Chu Qingyan, the space was distorted and time changed. There was a kacha sound, as if an arrow had been smashed into pieces. Diwu Lingguang chuckled. Yo, not bad. Long legs, your strength has improved a lot. Chu Qingyan said coldly, what does this have to do with your Sea Cloud Tower? Diwu Lingguang shrugged and said, it doesn't matter. Can't I fight? Jiang Nanyu went to the God's Memorial Tower. I was lonely, so I came to find you. TSK, did you miss me? Shameless. Thank you for the compliment. Chapter 1057. In the blink of an eye, there were 7 strong masters on Han Fei's side. Although there were more than 300 people in the big families, there were only 3 top powerhouses. As long as Chu Qingyan and the other 2 were blocked, Han Fei's team could kill their way into the crowd, and the consequences would be unpredictable. However, Chu Qingyan and the others didn't choose to retreat just because Diwu Haiguang came. Because in their view, Han Fei had just entered the ideal palace. Among the 7 soul realms, there might be a way to kill the enemy. But outside the soul realm, there were no corresponding weapons or special method. Even if all 300 people died, their souls would just return to their bodies. They could still come in again. Chu Qingyan said, I'll stop Diwu Haiguang. Sun Wu, you deal with Luo Jiutian. As long as you stop the 2 of them, our people will be fine. Nanshi, it's up to you. Li Xian, can Li Luoluo handle it? Diwu Haiguang looked at Han Fei and said leisurely, these people can't be killed. But you guys can't. Han Fei smiled and said, it's okay. However, the Sea Cloud Tower has never had anything to do with our Thug Academy. Why did you help us this time? Diwu Haiguang smiled casually. I'll tell you when you enter the 7th soul realm. Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that I still have a request. What he was afraid of was that kind of help for no reason. It wasn't easy to repay a favor owed for such a favor. Han Fei immediately said, "Okay, as long as it's within my ability." Diwu Haiguang smiled slightly. "Okay, based on my understanding of her, she will definitely not give up. I'll stop her. As for the others, you can deal with them yourselves." Han Fei nodded. Diwu Haiguang suddenly took a step forward. "Girl, can I help you straighten your bones?" "Humph. Do it." Han Fei said. "Xiao Bai, the four of you fight together. I'll deal with the others." As he spoke, Han Fei had already flashed over. Yang Nanshi wanted to attack Han Fei, but when she saw that Luo Xiaobai and the others were still there, she licked her lips and thought, "Let's stop two of them first." Buzz, 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 a large number of hunters disappeared, and Luo Xiaobai and Lu Renquang faced Yang Nanshi. Due to Zhang Xuanyu's powerful soul attack, his rod had already pierced through the void and directly killed a hunter. Li Luoluo didn't dare to be negligent at this moment. Surrounded by the colorful mist, she had already disappeared into it. On the ground, there were all kinds of insects and colorful worm stalks sticking out of the ground. In the melee, Han Fei's void lines turned into 100. With his current super strong divine soul power, controlling 5 or 6 people at once was no problem at all. Pu piu piu. At that moment, Han Fei was like a tiger in a flock of sheep. Wherever the weapon pointed, no one was a match for it. An armorist fully activated his shield, but he slashed with the draw technique and punched with the art of invincibility, crushing him to death. As a member of a divine manipulator clan, Luo Jiutian also used the Great Spirit summoning technique. He had mastered even more spiritual plants than Luo Xiaobai. Sun Wu could seal 1 or 2 parts, but she couldn't seal all of them. Besides, on those ice layers, there were also crystal white ice flowers blooming, demonic vines breaking out, and man-eating flowers snatching food. As for Fifth Hazy Light, Han Fei finally knew why Fifth Hazy Light was known as the #1 battle archer in the Thousand Star City. He stepped on an array and the frequency of his arrows had already become phantoms. It was not an exaggeration to call him Shadowless Hands. Besides, none of the arrows shot out could be seen. Is this the Shadowless Arrow Stream? Impressive. The moment he saw the Shadowless Sword Stream, Han Fei immediately felt that the War Soul Archer technique was weak. Whether it was the frequency of shooting or the weirdness of the archery, it seemed to be much worse than the Shadowless Sword Stream. Of course, Han Fei was not weak either. In just an instant, 6 people had died. No one knew whether they had really died or not. At least for now, Han Fei didn't want to expose the secret of the void lines. Otherwise, these people would probably retreat immediately. Because the void line's frequency of hooking people was not that fast. Therefore, Han Fei was not under great pressure in the battle. He could even help Zhang Xuanyu and Li Luoluo kill 1 or 2 people. In the distance, some people were still watching and couldn't help but sigh. Someone exclaimed, "So strong, 7 people against more than 300 people, it's really crazy." Someone said, "Look, the visualization fossil can't even hurt Han Fei." Bam! A bone knife exploded in front of Han Fei. A strange array appeared in front of Han Fei and easily blocked the knife. Han Fei casually waved his knife, but in fact, the knife was extremely sharp. With one knife, a soul warrior was beheaded by Han Fei. Until the moment of his death, his eyes were filled with horror, but he couldn't say anything. If he had a chance, he would tell the others that he couldn't be resurrected. After about half an hour, the bone knives kept exploding. Zhang Xuanyu was not so suitable for group battles. At this moment, he was defending in 3 directions, but he was still dripping with blood from the bone knives. Li Luoluo didn't have a good time either. Although she was also a hunter, she was still no match for Li Xian and a group of strong people in the same realm as her. If it were only 10 or 8 people, it might not be a big problem. But now, it wasn't just a matter of 10 or 8. On Han Fei's side, the number of people who had died under the void lines had exceeded 50. At this moment, seeing that Zhang Xuanyu was in a difficult situation. If Luo Xiaobai hadn't been distracted, she would have been in danger. Go to hell! Han Fei flashed directly to Zhang Xuanyu, pressed down the law of gravity, and the void lines caught the 5 people at once. Swish, swish, swish. All 5 people died. Han Fei shouted, "Don't be reluctant to give up the soul fruit. Eat it." Zhang Xuanyu grinned. "I'm fine. Don't worry, I can still fight for another hour." Han Fei flashed again, went to Li Luoluo, and grabbed at Li Xian with one hand. The latter blocked it with his long sword, turned into a shadow, and stepped back. At the same time, a few strange stones flew at him. Boom! Han Fei's soul-driving array was shattered. However, the bones didn't really hurt him much. Li Luoluo took a breath. This person has the shadow technique, and so does his combat skill. Han Fei focused, stomped his feet violently, and blasted out a sacrificing punch. A hunter who was about to launch a sneak attack was crushed by this punch. At this moment, a lightning-fast figure suddenly appeared beside Han Fei. A cone-shaped stab pierced at Han Fei's armpit. At this time, Han Fei had no time to use the law of gravity. Almost in an instant, the void lines around him buckled at the person. He had originally thought that this was a hunter with a stronger ability. However, the space suddenly twisted, and the figure disappeared directly from his range of control. Han Fei's face changed drastically. The star teleportation technique? The newcomer was also shocked. At that moment, he felt that if he had been one step slower, he would have died. Immediately, the figure shouted, "Attention, Han Fei has a method to kill souls. Be careful." Hua! Li Xian, Sun Wu, Chu Qinyan, and Yang Nanshi were all stunned. In the next second they were all horrified. Without the visualization fossil, how could he have a method to kill souls? Chu Qinyan immediately shouted, "Retreat!" At that moment she was a little horrified. If Han Fei had a method to kill souls, then those people who had just died, she didn't dare to think about the consequences. In this case, in just a moment, more than 60 people had died in Han Fei's hands. These were not 60 cabbages. They were the powerful peak-level hidden fishers from the major families. If it weren't for the suppression of the ideal palace, any one of them could become a heavenly talent. So many people had died in such a short time. Plus those who had died before, there were probably nearly 100 people. This loss made Chu Qingyan's face extremely ugly. Han Fei was a little annoyed. He didn't expect that there would be members of the Yi family here. Son of AB*TCH, he was going to kill all the people here. Han Fei immediately cursed, "Hold those guys for me. I'm going to kill them all." As he spoke, Han Fei's footsteps changed. Flickering infinitely, coupled with the 64-dimensional fish-dragon dance, he could kill as many as he could. Han Fei was like a phantom in the void, constantly changing his position. The void lines no longer concealed themselves and directly spread out, pouncing on him. It was a pity that with the reminder from the Yi family, Han Fei only had time to kill 7 people, and the children of the big clans had already retreated, hiding or running wildly. After all, these people cherished their lives. Knowing that Han Fei had a method to kill souls, escaping was the top priority. Yang Nanshi's shocking sledgehammer smashed down, buying time for them to escape. Sun Wu turned into sand and retreated, and Li Xian was long gone. Chu Qinyan, the strongest, was slapped hard on the butt by Diwu Haiguang when he retreated. Diwu Haiguang said leisurely, "Yeah, it's very textured." "Diwu Haiguang, I'll kill you." Diwu Glimmer raised her claw and waved it. "Don't. You'll come and go. I'll let you slap me. That's all. I'm very generous." "Shameless." Chu Qinyan left these 2 words and ran far away. It was impossible for Han Fei and the others to catch up with him. If the peak-level hidden fishers fled in all directions, even if Han Fei could catch up and kill 3 or 5 of them, it wouldn't make a difference. This couldn't hurt the big clans. For the children of the big clans this year, There were more than 100 peak-level hidden fishers. Even if these 300 people were killed, it would at most make these big clans angry for a while. Originally, some of the onlookers also ran away at this moment. Some thought, it's none of my business. They probably won't come to kill me. Of course, they definitely didn't dare to approach. But among this group of people, there was only one exception. A man with a mustache ran over eagerly. Congratulations, congratulations, congratulations to the Thug Academy for showing your power, asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1058. Han Fei didn't need to look to know who this person was. Wang Santai. This guy was stunned. Since he knew that Han Fei had the means to kill souls, why did he still dare to come over? He was a typical money grubber. Most importantly, Wang Santai actually had his own way of identifying people. In the eyes of others, Han Fei was very crazy. However, after all, Han Fei was only targeting the children of these big clans. Besides, as an intelligence provider, as long as he could provide information, he would be useful. Han Fei and the others didn't have to kill him. Wang Santai said obsequiously, "The Thug Academy is really brave and unparalleled. My admiration for you is like a surging wave, unending." Han Fei casually threw out more than a dozen mid-level soul fruits and said, "You deserve it. I just want you to pay attention to the situation in the ideal palace. As long as the intelligence is useful, you will be rewarded." Wang Santai took it and looked at it. Good heavens! He threw 12 mid-level soul fruits at him. It seemed that Han Fei had killed a powerful person and thrown the other party's soul fruits at him. This was much higher than the price he asked for. He only asked for 50 low-level soul fruits, but Han Fei immediately gave him mid-level soul fruits. This was definitely a big profit. Wang Santai immediately beamed with joy. "Brother Han, don't worry. From today on, my only role is to help the Thug Academy gather intelligence." "Well, do you want intelligence on the Undying Soul Realm?" "I know a lot about the Undying Soul Realm," Luo Jitian suddenly said. "No need." Of course, Wang Santai knew Luo Jitian. How could he not know such a big shot? Wang Santai immediately smiled and said, "Then I won't disturb you anymore. Take your time." Would Wang Santai continue to gather intelligence? Han Fei actually didn't care that much. However, he felt that the intelligence this guy gave him was still useful. As for a few mid-level soul fruits, well, they were just a piece of cake. He didn't even know whose resources he had robbed. Anyway, he had already eaten the Destiny Soul Fruit. Why would he care about these mid-level soul fruits? After Wang Santai left, Luo Jitian looked back at Luo Xiaobai and said, "I was in the Soul Realm, so I came late." "Okay." Luo Xiaobai just nodded and didn't say anything to her brother. Han Fei cast a few divine healing techniques on Luo Xiaobai and the others. In their eyes, Luo Xiaobai and her brother didn't seem to have a good relationship. However, it made sense. Luo Xiaobai had been in the Thug Academy since she was 12 years old. The rest of the time was spent with Han Fei and the others. Therefore, in terms of feelings, she might be closer to Han Fei and the others. Diwu Glimmer smiled and said, "Brother Luo, your sister is very pure." Before Luo Jiotian could speak, Zhang Xuanyu bared his teeth. "Are you as handsome as me?" Fifth Glimmer. Zhang Xuanyu immediately became suave and elegant. He said leisurely, "Our Xiaobai has high standards. None of them are as handsome as me, so I don't like them." Luo Xiaobai said gloomily, "Shut up." Diwu Haiguang stroked the bow and arrow in his hand and laughed. "Interesting." Han Fei glanced at Diwu Haiguang. "Ranked second on the top 10 heavenly talents list, you really deserve your reputation. That was Shadowless Arrow Stream, right?" Diwu Haiguang smiled and said, "You are very well informed. However, the so-called top 10 heavenly talents are just relative. With your current strength, it will be easy for you to enter the heavenly talents list. Even I wouldn't dare to casually spar with you after witnessing Brother Han's abilities." Han Fei naturally ignored this kind of polite words. Han Fei suddenly asked, I'm quite curious about one thing. Jiang Nanyu, who ranks first on the Heavenly Talents list, and you are both from the Sea Cloud Tower. But the Sea Cloud Tower is not conspicuous among the 7 major sections. In terms of ranking alone, it is even ranked last. I'm afraid it's not simple, right? Diwu Haiguang smiled lightly. How can it compare to the Thug Academy? When the Thug Academy was still around, the Sea Cloud Tower had nothing to do with it. However, now, in terms of the achievements of training students, the Sea Cloud Tower is indeed good. We may not be as good as the other 6 academies in terms of number and scope of involvement. But today, the number of powerhouses in the Sea Cloud Tower is no less than that of any other sect. Han Fei nodded slightly. Thank you for this time. Diwu Haiguang hurriedly said, Don't. Although I happened to meet Brother Luo this time, I naturally have my own plans. You don't have to thank me. I may have to trouble you again in the future. Han Fei nodded. It's good that you have something to ask. As long as it doesn't touch my bottom line and I can have such a temporary ally, it's a waste not to accept it. At least in the ideal palace, it would be fine if I offended Chu Qinyan and the others. However, if I really offended all the top 10 geniuses, I'm afraid it will not be easy to break through the 7 soul realms. Diwu Haiguang patted Luo Jiutian's arm and said, It's not suitable for me to participate in the following matters. Everyone, goodbye. After Diwu Haiguang left, Luo Jiutian said, Is Mo Fan dead? Luo Xiaobai nodded. Yes. Luo Jiutian smiled lightly. It doesn't matter if he's dead. This is the ideal palace anyway. However, you still have to be careful. Although Chu Kuangren and Mo Fan are dead and Jiang Nanyu has left, there are still a few geniuses in addition to me and Diwu Haiguang. They haven't appeared yet, so they may be trapped in a certain soul realm. Besides, in addition to the top 10 geniuses, there are still some who are not listed on the Heavenly Talents list, but it doesn't mean that they are not geniuses. For example, Li Xian is ranked 11th. Han Fei couldn't help asking, a lot? Luo Jiutian replied, quite a few. You know very few of them. However, the aristocratic families of the 1,000-star city have thousands of years of inheritance after all. How can there be so few heavenly talents in their families? Han Fei nodded. Thank you for your reminder, Brother Luo. Oh right, about the undying soul realm. Luo Xiaobai continued, what are the 7 soul realms like? What do I need to pay attention to? Seeing that Luo Xiaobai was so straightforward to her brother, Han Fei thought to himself, with Luo Xiaobai's temperament, it will be very difficult for her to find someone to cultivate with in the future. Luo Jiutian seemed to be used to this kind of conversation. He only smiled and said, Demonic plants nourish the soul, and the undying fusion battle technique. The sea nourishes the blood and bravery, the prehistoric knows all living beings. War prospered the world, and reincarnation reflected on the past and present. I don't know about the 7th soul realm. Zhang Xuanyu could not help but ask, what do you mean? Li Luoluo replied, I don't understand. Han Fei was also confused as he waited for Luo Jiutian to continue. Luo Jiutian smiled faintly. It is extremely difficult for humans to cultivate the soul. The demonic plant soul realm exists to allow humans to cultivate the power of the soul quickly. The undying soul realm is like a test, where you can encounter all kinds of undying heroic souls and combat method. It is an excellent place to cultivate combat skills and deduce your own combat skills to the extreme. Luo Xiaobai asked, a test? Luo Jiutian said, yes, it's like a test. The entire ideal palace may be a test. In order to select the best talents, it is not easy to pass any soul realm. Lu Renquang asked, what else? Luo Jiutian continued, the 3rd soul realm, the sea soul realm, is more like a place to cultivate combat awareness and human bravery. The creatures there are strange and have many means, and their strength is comparable to ours. They may even be stronger. It is generally suitable for team battles. Han Fei said in surprise, True see? Luo Jiutian shrugged. I'm not sure if it's true or not. Anyway, it feels very real. As for the prehistoric soul realm, it's hard to explain. I can't tell you the specifics, but it may subvert your understanding. That place is a mystical place with countless mystical creatures. Li Luoluo exclaimed and asked, Is it an underground city? Luo Jiutian wondered, An underground city? Luo Xiaobai said, An island with countless strange creatures, many demonic plants, and four-legged creatures. Luo Jiutian said in surprise, It seems that you have met them before. Yes, there are such places. So it's hard for me to explain. Han Fei asked, What else? Luo Jiutian said, The fifth soul realm, also known as the war soul realm. As the name suggests, it is a war. In the war between humans and sea demons, there will be creatures other than sea demons, such as shrimp soldiers, crab generals, clam girls, turtle slaves, etc. With that, Luo Jiutian said, These are not the key. What's important is the sixth soul realm. Very few people know about the sixth soul realm, and it is also very difficult. To be honest, I once fell into this soul realm. After coming back, my memory was damaged. It seems to erase some of the memories of the person who enters. However, through the incomplete memories, I seem to have entered another era. Han Fei took a breath and narrowed his eyes. His first thought was of a world like the heavenly desolate city. Entering another era? This soul realm is also called reincarnation. What does it mean? Luo Xiaobai said bluntly, The degree of danger. Luo Jiutian said, It's hard to say. Every soul realm is difficult, but it depends on how deep you go. If you want to directly reach the top of the list like this demonic plant soul realm, it will be extremely difficult. Brother Han, it should not be easy for you to climb the mountain in the demonic plant soul realm, right? Han Fei smiled awkwardly. What the hell do I know? At that time, I was so fascinated by the Demon King's contract. God knows what I did at that time. Luo Xiaobai nodded. What about the divine temple of creation? Luo Jiutian shook his head. I don't know about that. It's like an abandoned place. Even if someone knows, they won't tell you easily. I just want to remind you that, except for the sixth and seventh soul realms, the first four soul realms are easy to enter and leave, and the fifth soul realm is the easiest to die. So, don't pursue the ranking on this stone tablet too much. Since ancient times, countless people had perished in order to fight for this ranking. Anyway, you can enter at any time. If you can't do it this time, you can come again next time. It's not a big deal. Han Fei and the others fell silent. It sounds like these 7 soul realms are not easy to pass. Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1059. Since Luo Jiutian was Luo Xiaobai's brother, and one of the top 10 heavenly talents who had passed the 6 soul realms, his strength couldn't be underestimated. According to his description, Han Fei and the others immediately realized how dangerous the 7 soul realms were. The underground city was dangerous enough, wasn't it? However, a place like the underground city only ranked 4th among the 7 soul realms. It could be seen from this. Besides, Han Fei had just passed the demon plant soul realm in an abnormal state. However, Han Fei really didn't dare to use the Demon King's contract a second time. Therefore, it would be extremely difficult for Han Fei to get the first place in the next soul realm. Luo Jiutian suggested, I can act with you. Han Fei thought this was good. He could rest assured that there was a strong master with him. However, Luo Xiaobai directly refused. No. Go do your thing. Since it's an experience, you have to experience it yourself. If you provide guidance and protection, it won't be called an experience. Han Fei and the others subconsciously felt that the relationship between these two siblings was not very good, even a bit stiff. Luo Jiutian smiled and didn't say anything else. Okay, this time the Luo family has also sent some people in. They will pay attention to the movements of all parties. If anything happens, I will inform you as soon as possible. Okay. Luo Jiutian smiled awkwardly. Then I'm leaving? Okay. After Luo Jiutian left, Han Fei couldn't help looking at Luo Xiaobai. What's wrong? Is your relationship so stiff? Luo Xiaobai said lightly, we weren't close when we were kids. Zhang Xuanyu asked, do you have the same parents? Luo Xiaobai turned her head and glanced at Zhang Xuanyu, who immediately shut up. Obviously, Luo Xiaobai didn't want to talk about this topic. Zhang Xuanyu consciously shut up. He'd better not ask about other people's family affairs. In any case, everyone had left. After Chu Qinyan and the others learned that Han Fei could also kill souls outside, they would definitely be careful even if they wanted to take action. At least in this short period of time, they wouldn't come over to fight. Han Fei said, although our souls have been improved, we don't have any decent soul combat skills, which are not good for fighting. Since the Undying Soul Realm was a place to hone his combat skills, he should go there first. He wanted to hone himself and make himself stronger. It'll be easier to face the pressure later. Li Luoluo said, but I haven't been to this monster plant soul realm yet. Zhang Xuanyu smacked his lips and said, it's useless even if you go in now. The main big guys inside have all been defeated. Let's go to the Undying Soul Realm first. Lu Renkuang was a little tired. It seems that this ideal palace is a place for pure fighting. Fatty is too tired. Han Fei sneered. Okay, since we're here, we have to pass the ideal palace. If he couldn't pass it in one go, he would at least have to reach his limit. We can come again after we have accumulated enough strength. An hour later. Along the way, while communicating with Zhang Xuanyu about the usage of the soul, they were thinking about how to get a soul-related combat skill when they went out this time. For Han Fei, any kind of soul combat skill was fine. Anyway, he could deduce it. But Zhang Xuanyu was born with it. Soul explosion and spiritual puncture were all his specialties. In the face of ordinary masters of the same realm, he could easily crush them. However, when facing the top heavenly talents of the same generation, he was much weaker. Zhang Xuanyu's innate ability couldn't be replicated. Therefore, Zhang Xuanyu couldn't give a decent answer. At this moment, they had arrived at the foot of the mountain. At the foot of this mountain, there was a temple that seemed to be built by fish bones. On the left front of the fish mouth, a stone tablet stood quietly. The one who ranked first was a man named Ji Chen. It was impossible to find out which era he was from. In the long river of history, talents came forth in large numbers, and no one was absolutely strong. Even Han Fei, facing two powerhouses on the heavenly talent list, could only defend himself. It was difficult for him to beat them. At this moment, there were only a few people outside the fish bone cave. Moreover, most of these people had just come out from inside. Some people came from outside, wanting to enter the Undying Soul Realm. Two people who came from outside seemed to recognize Han Fei and the others. Their faces immediately changed and they slipped away. Han Fei and the others. Han Fei muttered, there are so few people. Luo Xiaobai said, since it's a place to practice combat skills and pursue combat methods, there shouldn't be any direct opportunities. I'm afraid that those people are either practicing in it or going to explore other soul realms. Zhang Xuanyu was full of interest. Among them, he was the one who liked to explore combat skills the most. And Han Fei was also tempted. Since comprehending the road to invincibility, he had actually comprehended all aspects. Even the 64-dimensional fish-dragon dance, which he used to find difficult, had now reached the minor level. If this Undying Soul Realm was really as useful as people said, it would be a suitable place for cultivation. Han Fei said, let's go. Let's go in first. Fatty, prepare infinite defense in case someone sneaks up on us inside. The scene of being sneak attacked in the demonic plant soul realm was still vivid in Han Fei's mind. Of course, although that level of sneak attack was not weak, It couldn't shake Han Fei and the others. But if it was Chu Qinyan and the others, it would be hard to say. After a moment, when the scene in front of them changed, a familiar picture came to their faces. Wasteland, barren, broken and muddy roads, decayed ancient walls, which seemed to be emitting the smoke of the battlefield. There was no seawater, but a pure land battlefield. The black gas of the undying heroic souls filled the air. Like ghosts, they were floating in the air, with all kinds of weapons in their hand. Of course, for now, this was much less than what they encountered in the undersea city. It might be because they had just come in and hadn't gone far. However, just nearby, 3 people were fighting with several undying heroic souls. The 2 sides were fighting fiercely, their figures flashing, and their steps were thrilling. Even the undying heroic soul looked like a living person. Except for their undying soul bodies, they were almost no different from ordinary people in terms of combat skills. Li Luoluo said in surprise, "Can undying heroic souls do this?" Luo Xiaobai nodded. "I haven't seen it before, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist." Han Fei said, "Come on, let's go straight inside. Let's go to a place where we can't go anymore." The person who spoke was a group of 5, and an undying heroic soul rushed up with a knife. A golden fist mark punched out, and a spear light slashed horizontally, shattering the 2 undying heroic souls. The 3 people who were fighting next door sucked in a breath of cold air. One of them froze and was stabbed by a knife. He retreated quickly and hurriedly ran out. Along the way, the 5 of them crushed all the enemies along the way. After 30 kilometers, the number of undying heroic souls began to increase. After 50 kilometers, the undying heroic souls were everywhere. After 100 kilometers, the heavenly talents who had died appeared one after another. The 5 of them had already used 70% of their combat power. Along the way they met other experiencers. When those people saw Han Fei and the others, they were horrified and excited. After traveling for another 50 kilometers, the number of human experts they encountered increased, and the number of immortal heroic souls decreased. Strong people were hard to come by. This was the truth. But surprisingly, in this undying soul realm, Han Fei and the others didn't see anyone with evil intentions. It seemed that the big families didn't care about Han Fei and the others. While fighting, Zhang Xuanyu frowned and said, "Will there be an ambush?" Han Fei said, "If there is an ambush, it should be behind us. The further we go, the stronger the undying heroic souls will be. If they want to sneak attack us, they will be besieged." Luo Xiaobai said, "Let's go forward." Until 180 kilometers away, Zhang Xuanyu and Li Luoluo stopped. There were powerful undying heroic souls here. Even if Han Fei and the others defeated them, they couldn't defeat them in one blow. Li Luoluo's combat power was actually extremely strong, but at this moment, she seemed a little weak. After all, when she was a peak-level hidden fisher, she was not strong enough. Otherwise, when she met Sun Mu on the ancient battlefield, she wouldn't have been defeated at all. Dozens of kilometers away, vines shot out from the ground, and Luo Xiaobai said, "Han Fei, go forward by yourself." At the same time, Luo Xiaobai cast the Grand Spirit summoning technique and said to Lu Renquang, "Don't rush forward. Without everlasting you may not be able to resist them. Find one to fight alone." Han Fei looked back, twisted his body, and dodged a shadow stab in the void. He was not far away from the others, and if he went forward a little more, he might not be able to continue. At this time, even if something happened to his companions, he could return in time. Immediately, Han Fei said, "Fatty Xiaobai, you two go together. You can take care of each other. If you need anything, just call me. I can hear you." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "Okay." With that, Han Fei had already flashed forward. Beside Han Fei, the void trembled slightly, and a phantom pierced the air at an extremely fast speed. With a thought, Han Fei directly put away the phantom glass wings, no longer using the desolate god body, but activated the 64-dimensional fish-dragon dance. He glanced at the wasteland ahead and smiled in his heart. It's time to integrate my combat skills. Third. Please vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 1060. The tempering of battle was actually similar to the experience left by Ren Tianfen in the Abyssal Chasm. However, in this battlefield, it was no longer an all-rounder like Ren Tianfen, but the immortal heroic souls that included the 5 major professions. At this moment, Han Fei rushed forward for dozens of kilometers, and a hunter and a manipulator came up to him. The tentacles that stretched out from the nothingness were like shadows stretching out from the edge of darkness. The hunter's incorporeal dagger drew a line of silver light in the air. The afterimage was visible and it was obviously very fast. Han Fei's body moved like a phantom between the countless shadow-like daggers and the silver light. At this moment, he saw 3 figures flying. Han Fei frowned. They are not fast enough. Immediately, Han Fei dodged while running and continued to sprint. And this time, another armorist appeared, who was a swordsman. At the moment when the more than 200 sword shadows raged, Han Fei felt the scene when he challenged Wu Ming. There were too many sword shadows, shadow vines, and silver light threads. The space around Han Fei was almost wrapped up. However, Han Fei's soul was keenly enough to sense the source of those threats. Using his body's instinctive reaction, Han Fei quickly changed his footstep. Puff. Even so, in only 1 second, Han Fei was cut in the calf by a dagger. Han Fei felt the strength of the sword's shadow and looked at it, only to find that there was only a white mark left on his leg. Han Fei was shocked. These people must have been very strong when they were alive. Even the immortal heroic souls could leave a mark on him. In this soul realm, because everyone was now a soul, there was no substantial difference between Han Fei and them. Puff, puff, puff. After a slight daze, 3 more white marks appeared on Han Fei's body. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat, and his footsteps changed. At this moment, he used almost all of the movement combat skills that he had comprehended before. Unlike when he challenged John Doe, the attack frequency of the immortal heroic souls here was infinite. There was no spiritual energy exhaustion here, so it was indeed the first choice to practice combat skills here. Of course, if Han Fei didn't have an abnormal physique and strength, rushing in blindly would be no different from suicide. Under the siege of the 3, Han Fei gradually entered a good state. Although the effects of the desolate god body were great, it was still insufficient in the face of such concentrated attacks. However, under such circumstances, human adaptability was also very strong. At this moment, Han Fei had already predicted the source of the attack in many cases. However, because his mind had not completely adapted to his body, he was a little uncoordinated. However, this incongruity was rapidly weakening, and Han Fei was gradually adapting to it. An hour later, when Luo Xiaobai and the others came to Han Fei's location, they were surprised to find that Han Fei was not fighting at all at this moment. Like a roly-poly doll, Han Fei moved his feet slightly, and every time his body shook and shrank, he could barely avoid an attack. Extreme reaction? In Luo Xiaobai's eyes, Han Fei seemed to be dodging attacks at his limit. The opponent's knife light and vines often brushed past Han Fei's body when they were only a few centimeters away from him. Luo Xiaobai was dealing with a hunter at the moment, so she had no time to pay attention to Han Fei, but she was a little shocked. Now, Han Fei probably had the explosive speed of a hunter, and his dodging skills were much higher than those of ordinary soul warriors. Then she remembered that Han Fei was also a spirit gatherer. Luo Xiaobai couldn't help thinking, the absolute advantage of being a spirit gatherer has begun to appear. And I, as a manipulator who controls the overall situation, may also need to make a breakthrough. Han Fei knew that Luo Xiaobai had come, but he didn't have time to care about her. At this moment, he was in a very strange state, a little bit enjoying it. This was a kind of enjoyment on the edge of a crisis, a bit like the excitement of pursuing the limit and also like showing off his skills. At this time, no attack could fall on Han Fei, and his figure was like a phantom in this small space. Suddenly, Han Fei's body trembled, and the reaction speed of his body and soul had been almost the same. Crack! Han Fei suddenly stretched out his hand, grabbed in the air, and the silver light was cut off. When Han Fei tapped his foot, he had already appeared at the end of the silver light. Bam! The golden fist mark suddenly broke out, and a shadow was smashed by a punch, flattened without a trace. At this moment there were still knife attacks. Han Fei seized a shadow vine and imagined that most of the spiritual energy in his body had gathered and drilled into the ground. Boom! The ground exploded and a shadow swept out. Swish! Han Fei slashed out with the draw technique and dodged a few shadow-long knives, not even looking at the immortal hero soul. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei moved forward in the knife waves again. At this time, an immortal hero soul that had just jumped out of the ground had been swept by the knife light and disappeared without a trace. At present, there was only an armor-type immortal hero soul left. Han Fei was even more complacent. 1,000 knives flew at him, but none of them could cut him. The distance of 1,000 meters was like a stroll in a courtyard, and he crossed it in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. Han Fei stuck close to the armor type and broke its armor with 3 punches. From then on, he destroyed this soul again. At this point, Han Fei looked back at Luo Xiaobai and then found that Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renquang were not far from him. However, Luo Xiaobai's fighting style slightly surprised Han Fei. He found that Luo Xiaobai's fighting style seemed to have changed. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai didn't use the Thousand Vines attack when she encountered a strong enemy like before, nor did she use the Grand Spirit summoning art. Instead, she jumped and moved. Wherever Luo Xiaobai passed, there would be a blue flower left in the air and on the ground. And wherever the immortal hero Soul Hunter passed, there must be a trap. Some of those blue flowers weaved into a net, some instantly turned into man-eating flowers, and some continuously burst out like swords. The most terrifying thing was that after each blue flower bloomed, it burst out in a different form. At this moment, it was no longer the hunter hunting Luo Xiaobai, but the hundreds of strange attacks began to surround the hunter. Traps! Han Fei couldn't help but smile. This kind of thing was the most troublesome. At this moment, Han Fei saw different traps cooperating with each other. For example, when the sword grass blades swept across, a mist would bloom. Outside the mist, there were also man-eating giant flowers biting. After the man-eating flowers, there were also vines extending like filament. All of this was to block the area that the hunter passed through. Han Fei thought to himself, as expected of a divine manipulator family. Manipulators of other families could only control one kind or at most a few kinds of spiritual plant. But for a divine manipulator family, there seemed to be no such restriction at all. Luo Xiaobai could use all the special spiritual plants that Han Fei and the others had seen. A manipulator could be used as countless manipulators. If ordinary people encountered such a battle, how could they fight? Seeing that Luo Xiaobai seemed to be very good at it and was unhurriedly finishing the battle, Han Fei continued to walk forward. However, before he ran far, Han Fei suddenly stopped. At this moment, he found that in front of him was a large cemetery. Bone jars were scattered on the ground, almost no different from the bone jar plain he had seen in the underground city. If there was any difference, it was that the density of the bone jars here was very low. Often, there was only one from a long distance. Besides, these bone jars were quite exquisite, jade-like, inlaid with gold wires, and with complex carvings engraved on them. Han Fei was stunned for a moment and then continued to walk forward. As he expected, bone jars should be a way of burial. The so-called bone jar plain was a graveyard. So, did all those immortal souls come out of these bone jars? Han Fei walked to the nearest bone jar and was about to stretch his head out to take a look. However, just as he walked over, when he was still 100 meters away from the bone jar, he found that the bone jar began to vibrate slightly. Huh! The reaction of this jar is quite strong. Han Fei took a few more steps forward, only to see a hand stretching out of the bone jar, and Han Fei's pupils constricted. It's not an immortal soul? Han Fei looked at this scene in astonishment. To his astonishment, what came out of this jar was not an immortal soul, but a corpse. At this moment, Han Fei immediately remembered his experience in the bone jar plane and thought to himself, no way. Are they all corpses? To be honest, Han Fei felt a little scared when he saw corpses now. After all, the corpses he had encountered were all very powerful. However, this was the soul world, and he wondered if these corpses were actually transformed by souls. In fact, this was not their true bodies. When the corpse quickly crawled out, it turned out to be a burly middle-aged man wearing broken armor. He stretched out a hand, and a slender shadow staff appeared. Han Fei saw blue flames blossoming in the eyes of the corpse, which was staring at him quietly. In the next second, the corpse stepped forward, broke through the air, and the shadow of the rod stretched out from the void and fell directly in front of Han Fei. However, Han Fei could even avoid Zhang Xuanyu's momentary time. The strength of this corpse didn't exceed that of a hidden fisher. How could it be a match for him? However, the moment the rod left its hand, the void shone brightly. It was obvious how fast it was and how powerful it was. Han Fei punched and bent the rod with a punch. The corpse retreated 7 or 8 steps and violently charged back. In an instant, a fierce battle broke out. 30 breaths later, the corpse crumbled. Han Fei came to the bone jar and looked into it, only to see that it was empty, but a shadow was gradually condensing. Sure enough, the corpse is also composed of souls, not real objects. In the battle just now, Han Fei found that this corpse was actually equivalent to an ordinary heavenly talent from a big family, not strong. But this was the first one he saw. As he went deeper, it would only get stronger and stronger. Han Fei looked back and saw that Luo Xiaobai and the others hadn't come up yet, so he continued to walk in. The 4th chapter. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1061. One day later, Han Fei went deep into the bone jar cemetery. The number of bone jars here did not decrease, but increased. From one at the beginning, there were now 5 or 6 corpses at a time. Han Fei fought all the way until he found the first golden bone jar. Before Han Fei approached, he saw a corpse that looked like a young man, holding 2 knives and sitting on the bone jar. For some reason, Han Fei found that this young man seemed to be more agile than those corpses. The blue soul fire in his eyes was flickering, but it was unknown whether or not he was still thinking. Since the other party used knives, Han Fei also took out the blood-drinking knife. With the previous experience, Han Fei didn't hesitate to use the draw technique. At the moment the draw technique was used, the young man put his 2 knives together, and 100 knife lights slashed out in the air in an instant. Clang, 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 so fast. Han Fei frowned. This man's attack is so fast. In the blink of an eye, the 100 saber shadows had broken his drawing technique. The young man seemed to put his hands together, but at that moment, he had actually slashed out hundreds of times. His speed was the fastest that Han Fei had ever seen. Han Fei rushed forward and didn't plan to use other skills. Since he had encountered a master who used knives, he would compete with him in knife skills. His draw technique originated from the knife scripture, a heaven-level, divine-quality combat skill. Of course, a single draw technique couldn't be regarded as a divine-quality combat skill. The draw technique was just a move in the knife scripture. On the other hand, the saber scripture was a collection of hundreds of saber techniques and combat skills. It included a comprehensive set of saber techniques, saber manipulation, saber intent, and saber realm. Therefore, Han Fei immediately recognized that this young man should be a heavenly talent who practiced fast knives. and he must be a heavenly talent. With the move just now, Han Fei was sure that it wouldn't be a problem for him to defeat more than half of the same realm masters in the Thousand Star City and the Scattered Stars Island. When Han Fei attacked, he saw two shadow knife souls appear behind the young man. These two knives hung on both sides of him, as if they were controlled by his mind. Clang, clang, clang. When they clashed, Han Fei's face changed slightly. This young man's knife was so heavy. Although he didn't use any secret method, it still had the power of two waves. However, Han Fei immediately felt that something was wrong the moment the blades collided with the young man's. A saber manipulation technique with saber intent? Very heavy? Swish, swish, swish. It was as if the four blades were moving at high speed. Not only were they fast, they were also very heavy. As a result, it was impossible for Han Fei to defeat the opponent with only the draw technique. With a thought, another blood-drinking knife appeared in his left hand. If one knife couldn't block it, he would use two. Therefore, in this strange place, the two figures were completely submerged in the violent saber radiance. At this moment, he was almost out of sight, but there was a large area of saber radiance coming from all directions. The ground was covered with knife marks. Han Fei stretched out both hands and used the draw technique. The young man's figure suddenly disappeared, leaving only 100 saber lights and a long saber that had been sent flying. Han Fei's body suddenly turned, because there was also a knife light coming at him from the side. The knife light was like an arc of a half-moon, containing the intent of tearing. As the knife light swept past, sand and stones were sent flying. Blade Realm. Han Fei's pupils contracted. If this person had comprehended the saber intent, it wouldn't be a big deal. After all, he was once a peerless heavenly talent, probably in ancient times. It was not impossible for him to comprehend the saber intent. However, this knife strike had reached the realm, and there was a faint fluctuation of the power of law in this knife strike. Han Fei could clearly feel that if he was in this arc of a half-moon, he would definitely be injured. After all, from the saber intent to the realm, it showed that this person had reached a unique level of talent in saber cultivation. Among them, the intent of tearing could even cut the soul. So strong. However, Han Fei was not afraid. If it was the saber intent, then when he comprehended the road to invincibility, he had already comprehended the saber intent. But in terms of realm, he was still a little behind. Clang, clang, clang. After this knife light, the four knives of the young man returned again, making it seem as if thousands of knives were launched at the same time. Han Fei found that he could only guard against it and had no time to fight back. Because the other party's knife speed was too fast, he could barely keep up with it. After only about half an hour or so, there were thousands of bloody wounds on Han Fei's body. Although his body hadn't been broken, this young man was definitely the most talented one he had ever met. Obviously, he had surpassed Ning Jingyao, John Doe, and Sun Mu in his peak state. No. This kind of knife technique is at most comparable to a heaven-level divine quality knife. But my knife technique is also heaven-level divine quality. How can it be so much weaker? Is it just because the other party is fast? Han Fei's hands moved like phantoms. Cooperating with the 64-dimensional fish-dragon dance, he resisted the storm-like attacks while thinking about the realm that he had been neglecting. John Doe's 300-meter sword domain and Ning Jingyao's star demonic knife both had a certain realm. John Doe's realm was within 300 meters. His sword was invincible, and this 300 meters was his world. Ning Jingyao's star-sharpening knife, with the power of starlight, could make endless knife attacks. Although Han Fei had the invincible knife intent, his knife speed was still slightly slow. If his knife speed could catch up with the young man in front of him, the other party would definitely be defeated. However, the problem now was that he couldn't catch up. Half an hour later, Han Fei felt that his soul was slightly injured. If it weren't for his freakish physique, he might have been defeated within 10 minutes. No, I can't keep up with his speed, so I can only increase the power of the attack. Han Fei's mind returned to the draw technique again. He had the invincible knife intent, and he could inject all his spiritual energy into a terrifying knife attack, but it was still not enough. Swish! The draw technique and the air-breaking strike were launched in an instant at a very short distance. However, as Han Fei expected, when Han Fei attacked, the other party's body was directly swapped with one of the knives in the knife light, and the attack didn't work at all. No, I have to lock it. How do I lock it? The sacrificing punch should work. However, the time required for the sacrificial punch is relatively longer. Huh? The sacrificing punch is a burst of energy. Energy exists in the void and can exist regardless of space. Then can I set up energy around my body and inject energy and spiritual energy into the knife at the same time? Han Fei's eyes flashed, and energy spurted out of his body. The blood-drinking knife in his hand hummed, and he stepped on the ground, and the coiled turtle array appeared. In a very short time, Han Fei slashed at the void, and the young man's body disappeared again, and reappeared on Han Fei's right side. However, at the moment he appeared, a knife suddenly erupted in the void and swept straight in front of him. Clank, clank, clank. Puff! Even though there were 100 knife lights, the young man was still beheaded. The surrounding knife lights collapsed into nothingness in an instant. Han Fei let out a long sigh of relief. It turns out that at this point, the common feature of combat skills is that they can be exchanged. The combination of energy and spiritual energy is far more powerful than a single burst of power. Han Fei was enlightened. However, Han Fei didn't look very happy. This was the first golden jar he had seen. Ordinary people would probably be killed in an instant. This was a real moment of life and death. If it weren't for his strong physique, if Han Fei didn't want to retreat immediately, he would have to use the law of gravity, the void lines, and the sacrificing punch to win. No. I'm still too slow. Quick knives, interesting. I have to remind Xiaobai and the others to be careful of the golden bone jar. When Han Fei looked back and found Luo Xiaobai, she was fighting with the corpse of a hunter. The opponent was a hunter with explosive attacks, so every attack was extremely powerful. Although Luo Xiaobai had many traps, many of them couldn't control the opponent at all. Therefore, she was forced to use the death substitution technique. Seeing this scene, Han Fei wasn't worried. If he wanted to kill a manipulator like Luo Xiaobai, he had to have explosive attacks to keep up with the speed of Luo Xiaobai's death substitution technique. Han Fei said to Xiaobai via voice transmission, "Xiaobai, be careful of the golden bone jar. When you encounter it, use all means. If you can't beat it, retreat immediately." Puff! Luo Xiaobai emerged from a blue flower. Got it. Han Fei glanced around, ignored Luo Xiaobai, and began to look for the three of them. After a while, Han Fei saw a scene that made him dumbfounded. He was surprised to find that the three of them had encountered the golden bone jar. The opponent was an armorist. At this moment, the three of them were being suppressed and hiding in Lu Renkuang's infinite defense. The opponent's armorist was really powerful. He controlled his sword and spread his sword intent to a radius of 1 kilometer. This kilometer was his domain of swords. It was like a big killing array. At the same time, at least 7 kinds of wonderful sword techniques bombarded from all directions. There were sword rain, flashing sword chi, armor-piercing sword chi, and long sword chi dragons. Li Luolua's insects were useless here. The armorist was not a human being, so he wouldn't be affected by Li Luoluo at all. However, Han Fei was surprised to find that Li Luoluo seemed to be a different person at this moment. Li Kuang? Li Kuang rushed at the infinite defense several times, and the long rod in his hand was like thousands of overlapping shadows, but he couldn't resist the endless sword chi dragons at all. But in an instant, he was forced back. Zhang Xuanyu's third sky of the sea-shaking realm had just broken through a few sword waves and sword rain when he was forced back by the endless sword chi killing array. Momentary Time's attack was directly blocked by the shadow turtle shell in front of the armorist, unable to hit the armorist directly. Lu Renkuang was only a little better. With the help of the sky swallowing technique, he kept trying to approach the armorist. However, the armorist was not a fool and knew how to retreat. Besides, the armorist also knew that the giant sword was flying in the sky, intending to block the sky swallowing technique. Han Fei watched from a distance. The three of them tried to rush out at the same time, but they only lasted for more than 10 minutes before they ran back into the infinite defense array one after another. Han Fei was speechless. The opponent's armorist is a bit too strong. I wanted to write something different, but I couldn't think of anything. So, I'll just stick to the plan and write it in a slightly messy way. There might be some parts that I don't understand, but it's not a big problem. I don't need to think about it, and you'll naturally understand it in the end. I feel like it's getting better as I go on. Thank you for your monthly votes, everyone. I'll keep asking for more monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1062. When Li Luoluo saw Han Fei, she immediately shouted, "Brother Han, come and help." Zhang Xuanyu shouted, "No, this kind of strong master is more exciting." Lu Renkuang was speechless. "Why don't you run out of the Imperial Everlasting Realm to have fun?" Han Fei said, "You guys fight first. I'll take a look here." Han Fei didn't intend to help because the three of them had obviously blocked this armorist. However, he hadn't found a way to deal with this armorist for the time being. However, Han Fei had the experience just now. At this time, he had found that the people in the 2 golden bone jars he had encountered in a row were extremely strong. Any one of them could be comparable to the so-called top 10 heavenly talent. Just like the one he had encountered, his sword intent and sword realm had almost been cultivated to the extreme. Now this armorist was the same. An armorist had created a sword domain by brute force. Besides, there was an armorist's sword intent in the sword chi, which made it impossible for the Lu Renkuang trio to rush out. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, is this immortal soul realm really just a place to hone combat skills? He didn't think so. If it was just for honing combat skills, it shouldn't be so difficult here. If he wanted to sharpen himself, then he had to look like he was sharpening himself. At the very least, he had to have a battle that was on par with him. But at this moment, the corpse in the golden bone jar could almost crush a heavenly talent. Was the other party really that tyrannical? No, it was because the opponent had a new direction after comprehending combat skills to the extreme. This direction, such as domain, fighting intent, and realm. It was because they had such comprehension of non-battle techniques that they were so powerful. Suddenly, Han Fei understood something. So that's how it is. When a combat skill is cultivated to the end, the effect of the combat skill itself is not great. Instead, it's the understanding of the realm. You need to find a suitable fighting method and fighting intent, which is the real purpose of the immortal soul realm. Han Fei suddenly shouted, "Listen up, you have to find a way to break away from the combat skill itself and create a new realm for your combat skill. You have to find a realm that can be produced after you exert the combat skill to the extreme, such as domain and fighting intent." Zhang Xuanyu gritted his teeth. "How can it be so simple? Go do your own thing. We can hold on here. Anyway, we have unlimited energy and spiritual energy. Don't panic." Han Fei nodded. Even if the three of them couldn't stop the armorist, it wouldn't be a problem for them to retreat if they wanted to. However, when the armorist saw Han Fei, he was distracted to attack Han Fei. Han Fei smiled and strolled in the sword chi. Leaping into the air, Zhang Xian twisted his body, and in the blink of an eye, he had already escaped the other party's attack. Seeing that the three of them were fine, Han Fei turned to find Luo Xiaobai. He felt that the strength of the expert in the golden bone jar was too ridiculous. Luo Xiaobai might not be able to defeat them alone, so they had to leave together. When he saw Luo Xiaobai again, he found that Luo Xiaobai was also coming to him. Han Fei asked in surprise, "Is it done?" Luo Xiaobai nodded. "The experts in these bone jars are a bit too strong. I'm about to join you." Han Fei grinned and said, "That's great. Go find the fatty and the others. The three of them are currently being suppressed by others." Ah? Luo Xiaobai was a little surprised. The three of them were together? And he was even being suppressed by the other party? This was no laughing matter. Luo Xiaobai guessed that there wouldn't be many hidden fishers who could suppress the three of them in the entire Thousand-Star City. Han Fei added, "They are fighting 1 against 3. Luo Xiaobai." Han Fei smiled and said, "Pay attention to your understanding of the realm. When you hone your combat skills, the key may not be the combat skills themselves." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "What about you?" Han Fei looked into the distance. "I'm fine. I'm going to go deeper and have a look." Luo Xiaobai said, "Be careful." The two brushed past each other and left separately. Having long been used to the way he got along with Luo Xiaobai, Han Fei didn't feel it was pretentious at all. Although they were from the same sect, they had their own paths, and everyone knew it. Han Fei returned to the place just now again. After such a long time of fighting, he didn't find anyone coming to pick a fight, so it must be because no one came. Besides, now that Luo Xiaobai and the other three were together, even if someone wanted to pick a fight, they wouldn't be afraid if the top 10 heavenly talents didn't join forces. However, those who could come together were none other than Chu Qingyan, Sun Wu, and Yang Nanshi. The Chun family, who ranked 9th, had never been involved in the affairs of the Thug Academy, so he didn't care. Zhang Mingquan, who ranked 10th, could also be counted as one, but he didn't appear in the demonic plant soul realm. He probably wouldn't come this time. And those who weren't part of the top 10 heavenly talents might not necessarily take risk. After all, this was already the depths of the undying soul realm, and they had already begun to touch the golden bone pots. If they accidentally encountered a golden bone pot, the consequences were not something ordinary people could bear. As for those ordinary heavenly talents, it was impossible for them to enter here. Any bone pot they encountered here was not necessarily something they could deal with. Han Fei felt that this might be the reason why those big clans were unwilling to fight in the undying soul realm. They knew Han Fei's strength and knew that Han Fei and the others could go very deep. If they really brought a large number of heavenly talents from the big clans here, maybe half of them would die halfway. Passing the previous golden bone pot, Han Fei continued to move forward. Han Fei found that bone pots were already very rare, and ordinary bone pots were all gone now. After walking for a long time, he saw a new golden bone pot. This time, Han Fei encountered a manipulator. At the moment the short woman's corpse came out, grass grew everywhere, and the grass spread out for more than 3,000 meters around the golden bone pot. The girl looked at Han Fei, stretched out her hands, and a purple vine was held in her hands. Han Fei thought to himself, no matter how strong the vine is, can it block my knife? However, after only a few steps, Han Fei found that the grass had grown to his knees. He was just about to attack quickly, but to his surprise, he found that his speed was actually twice as slow. Oh no, another domain? Han Fei didn't dare to wait any longer and used the draw technique again. Because the speed was too fast, Han Fei saw that the corpse was directly chopped by the knife. However, seeing this scene, Han Fei's heart sank. How could a peerless heaven's favorite die so easily? Obviously not. Sure enough, the next moment, a mass of grass in this grassland turned into a human. Who else could it be but the corpse? Death substitute technique. Han Fei was speechless. This should be how many people felt when they encountered Luo Xiaobai, right? No matter how fast his attack was, no matter how ferocious his strength was, the other party's death substitution art had effortlessly blocked the force of his attack. Besides, the combat skill was clearly locked on to the manipulator at the previous moment. However, after being attacked, the The manipulator was no longer the same manipulator as when he was attacked. Han Fei was shocked. Manipulators were the same as spirit gatherers. Both of them didn't show their power in the early stage, but could become bosses in the later stage. In the face of this manipulator, the draw technique was obviously useless. The opponent could easily avoid it with the death substitute technique. Besides, the grass under his feet didn't stop growing because of Han Fei's stupor. But in a moment it had grown to Han Fei's waist. Although these grasses didn't entangle him, he didn't know what would happen next. Boom, boom, boom. The invincible fist mark roared out, and in the blink of an eye, hundreds of punches rolled over. In this grass, hundreds of paths were crushed by Han Fei. But in the places that weren't crushed, the grass and trees had grown to his chest. And the manipulator was still watching this scene quietly in the distance. Han Fei couldn't help but feel a headache. He stretched out his hand and the infinity water appeared. The water in all directions gathered and gradually turned into 10,000 knives floating in the air. However, at this moment the grass had grown taller than a man. And in the grass there were vines shuttling everywhere. Han Fei was about to take action, but suddenly there was nothing under his feet and his whole body fell straight into the ground. It turned out that the ground had been hollowed out by this manipulator, and it was full of entangled vines. At the moment Han Fei fell, endless vines rolled over overwhelmingly. Han Fei didn't panic. As he stretched out his hand, the million knife art poured down and drilled into the ground. Puff, puff, puff. The underground storm surged, and thousands of knives flew like crazy tornadoes. All the vines that intended to roll over were instantly shattered. However, the weeds, which were originally growing very luxuriantly, were also rapidly and in large quantities sweeping towards the ground at some point in time. In just a moment, the ground where Han Fei was had been covered by crushed plant fragments and mucus. No matter how powerful the million knife art was, it was only relative. If the grass and trees turned into liquid, could the million knife art hit them in the air? The answer was obviously no. Han Fei found that the grasses and trees had been minced by him into fine leaves, which were like liquid and were gradually solidifying. At the same time, he saw thousands of green threads forming in these liquid. Han Fei grabbed a handful of green threads casually and found that they were extremely tough. And these green threads were trying to drill into his body. Explode. The million knife art exploded in an instant, which was equivalent to the self-explosion of infinite water. At that moment, like the self-explosion of tens of thousands of semi-divine weapons, the sea of spiritual plants collapsed in an instant. When Han Fei reappeared, his face was covered with dust. And within 3,000 meters, there was devastation everywhere. Han Fei saw that the manipulator seemed to be seriously injured, but he had no doubt that if he hadn't exploded the infinity water, the other party would have made a follow-up move. That feeling was probably a bit similar to Luo Xiaobai's parasitism. This has gone beyond the scope of combat skills. Han Fei couldn't help but sigh. This manipulator was actually not that strong, because those shattered spiritual plants were now quickly gathering and growing rapidly. This was not a combat skill at all, but a pure domain, a spiritual plant domain. First, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1063. Han Fei couldn't help but be amazed. If all the opponents he had encountered were at this level, he would have been killed a long time ago. However, in a battle against a manipulator, combat techniques didn't really work. The manipulator didn't rely on combat techniques at all, so Han Fei didn't keep bothering her. He released the void lines. With a flip of his hand, the law of gravity descended. He used the draw technique again. When the manipulator used the death substitution technique again, the void lines that had been scattered in all directions directly clasped at the manipulator. After all, she was a corpse transformed from the soul world, so even though she looked like a corpse to the naked eye, she was actually just a soul. At this moment, Han Fei used all his methods. Naturally, the manipulator was no match for him. After all, the void lines weren't something that ordinary people could have. If Han Fei only had the law of gravity, he might have been able to fight with the manipulator for a long time. But at this moment, the manipulator was directly killed by Han Fei in only 10 seconds. Han Fei couldn't wait to find the next golden bone jar. He was thinking, if it were me, what domain should I walk on the path of invincibility? By logic, I could be absolutely invincible within 1 meter of myself like Du Jianglu. However, this was actually not considered a domain. It was more like a realm, where one had absolute control over a certain area around them. It sounded simple, but in reality, it was extremely difficult to achieve absolute control. Why does a domain exist? Han Fei frowned as he walked forward. The first one they encountered was the sword realm of the soul warrior, the sword realm of the armorist they were fighting, and the spiritual plant realm of the control room. Only the first one was playing with the intent, and the latter two were playing with control. However, regardless of whether it was states or control, Shao Chun had taken his strongest path to the peak. Han Fei's path was to be invincible, and he wouldn't develop every combat technique independently. However, could the invincible heart create a ranged domain? Han Fei stopped and tried to release his invincible fighting intent. However, he only felt that the strength of his body and faith didn't seem to make everything around him dangerous. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, can this fighting intent be turned into a substantial attack? Han Fei looked 3 meters in front of him and seemed to sense an indescribable charm in the air, but this charm couldn't be directly transformed into an attack. Since the invincible battle will can be used on oneself, why can't it exist as a kind of power? Golden light flashed on Han Fei's body, and an illusory fist mark appeared in front of him, but the resistance seemed to be a little strong. Han Fei was overjoyed. Yes, I have to find someone to fight. The further one went into the bone jar cemetery, the fewer bone jars there were. The frequency of ordinary bone jars appearing was even lower, while the frequency of golden bone jars appearing was naturally higher. Han Fei soon encountered the next golden bone pot without any effort at all. However, this time, he seemed to see a towering object behind the golden bone jar. It was so far away that it was blurry, but he didn't know what it was. Han Fei thought to himself, could it be a collapsed building? He didn't pay much attention to it. When he approached the golden bone jar, a light suddenly flashed under his feet. Han Fei subconsciously used the 64-dimensional fish dragon dance and stepped out. However, as soon as he stepped out, he discovered that one formation after another had appeared on the ground nearby. An axe light emerged from the array, and a saber light attacked from behind. Zhang Xuanyu and the others seemed to appear in front of him. It was obviously an illusion. Formation? A spirit gatherer? Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. As a spirit gatherer, although he treated himself as a soul warrior most of the time, he was still a spirit gatherer in essence. The ability of a spirit gatherer was of great use to him. Not only could he practice formations, but he could also assist in refining and cooperate with the team. Especially in the field of formations, he could set up a defensive array and even be treated as an armorist. But now, he actually encountered an ancient spirit gatherer, and a spirit gatherer who was good at using killing arrays. Han Fei deliberately didn't launch a strong attack but tried to condense a fist mark phantom with his invincible fighting intent. Just after a confrontation, the fist mark began to fade after just 10 meters. Han Fei set up a coiled turtle array under his feet to block the opponent's attack. He frowned and looked at the domain he had just comprehended, thinking, it doesn't seem to be very powerful. It's only 10 meters, but the power has faded. It seems a bit useless. At this time, on the opposite bone jar, the corpse of a young man had already stood up, holding a halberd in his hand, and was looking at him quietly. The coiled turtle array was broken, and Han Fei set up another coiled turtle array and cast a 7 spirits killing array on himself. At the same time, the surrounding golden heptachi erupted, and the knife shadows collided and bombarded each other. Seeing that the opponent was not in a hurry, Han Fei was not in a hurry either. He was still trying to study his invincible domain. He called this invincible fighting intent an invincible domain. His purpose was very simple. In this domain, he was invincible. Clang, 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 kacha. The two spirit gatherers fought with formations. Because there was infinite spiritual energy in the ideal palace, they could use it as much as they wanted. However, even though there were many of these formations, they were not considered to be very profound. In this place, the use of spiritual chi was all a gamble. The lethality of the killing array was also extremely great. The ground and the void in all directions were full of the sound of knives and swords, axes and sticks colliding. During this period, both sides were motionless, and from time to time, phantom fist marks roared out in the void, accompanied by faint golden light. They were accompanied by faint golden lights. Unfortunately, none of them were able to break through the range of the killing array or the 10-meter radius around him. Not long enough? Let's try stacking them. Han Fei tried to condense the invincible fighting intent into a fist. However, although the punch was not weak, it was not weak at all. But the invincible domain with a radius of 10 meters collapsed at the moment Han Fei punched, except for the direction where the fist pointed. It couldn't resist the attack of the killing array. No, this is not considered a domain. The ancient spirit gatherer didn't seem to want to wait any longer. On the ground, the flickering formations began to converge, and a great killing formation was brewing. Han Fei frowned, imagined spiritual energy, and forcibly changed the path of the ancient spirit gatherer's array. The divine soul power of both sides collided. Boom! The terrifying soul explosion impact directly crushed all the surrounding array formations and rushed towards the two of them. Soul-driving arrays appeared on Han Fei and the ancient spirit gatherer at the same time. Ignoring the shock waves, he continued to attack with his formation. Interesting. The corners of Han Fei's mouth rose. He had never met such a strong spirit gatherer. Their proficiency in formations, especially killing arrays, was obviously better than his. It wasn't that he didn't know enough, but Han Fei couldn't use dozens or hundreds of different types of killing arrays at will like the other party. However, they were both array masters, and their divine soul power was not weak, so they could both go all out. Even if he was lacking in the art of array formations, it was impossible for the other party to directly use array formations to kill him just by relying on his 3 axes. As long as the other party couldn't set up a great killing array, there was no possibility of winning. In this way, he would have enough time to try to use the invincible domain. Since I can't attack beyond 10 meters, what about within 10 meters? With a thought in Han Fei's mind, golden knife lights appeared around him. The knife lights rolled like a storm, which meant the million knife art. However, this was not what Han Fei wanted. Because the infinity water could also turn into the million knife art. If his invincible domain was only used as the million knife art, it would be meaningless. Since it can turn into knives, it can also turn into humans, right? For some reason, Han Fei suddenly thought of the giant mural he had seen in the 1,000-star proving ground. As the invincible fighting intent shrank, a golden phantom gradually overlapped with Han Fei's body. A golden phantom about 20 meters high appeared. The appearance of this golden phantom was almost exactly the same as Han Fei himself. There was no difference. However, at the moment this golden phantom appeared, Han Fei felt that his strength suddenly increased a lot. The power of law? No, this is the invincible fighting intent. Han Fei was a little surprised. He originally thought that since the invincible fighting intent couldn't form a domain within a range, he could take it back and condense it in his body. But Han Fei didn't expect that. Originally, it was his invincible fighting intent, which was divided and returned to him in another way, could actually increase his strength. Logically speaking, this was impossible. After all, with the law of conservation of energy, even if he spat out a mouthful of blood and swallowed it back, the total mass would definitely not change. This was a truth that everyone understood. However, now his strength had obviously increased a lot. Han Fei estimated that it had increased by at least 30%. No, there's another kind of power in it. Han Fei couldn't help thinking of Yangdiu, Chao Qiu, and even the secret method of Sea God Descends. Suddenly, he realized that this was the so-called will of the god of war. When he reached the extreme of his path, a will was generated, and then that will was added to him, making a qualitative leap in his strength. This was different from his law enforcement ability. They were both transformed in the form of a golden giant, but one was a law enforcement ability. The other was a special will. He didn't know if the two could be superimposed. Unfortunately, in the ideal palace, the law enforcement ability couldn't be used. Otherwise, he could give it a try. Han Fei suddenly grinned and suddenly rushed forward. The ancient spirit gatherer was expressionless, but a big axe appeared in his hand. He leaped into the air, and in mid-air, under the axe light, an array appeared. Arrays can be used like this? Second, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1064. Seeing that this ancient spirit gatherer used an axe, Han Fei knew that the other party was also a soul warrior. Otherwise, a spirit gatherer would be defeated by a soul warrior head-on. However, the way the other party attacked shocked Han Fei. Yes. Why can't I use arrays when I attack? If I combine arrays with attacks, wouldn't my strength be even stronger? Han Fei immediately punched out with a golden fist mark. In the next second, the void burst, and the golden fist mark was split open by the other party's axe. This was not the same Han Fei as before. This was Han Fei whose strength had increased by at least 30%. Even if he hadn't completely comprehended the ultimate invincible will before, not everyone could block his golden fist mark. But at this moment, not only was this punch blocked, but it was also shattered. Not only that, but the other party's attack was still falling, but its power had been reduced by more than 70%. Immediately, Han Fei roughly judged how powerful the other party's array was. Under the dual power of the attack and the array, it was as if his attack had the law of gravity, and its power had increased by at least 50% or even doubled. Han Fei felt as if he had discovered a new continent. His heart was surging and he couldn't calm down. Fortunately, he came to the immortal soul realm. It was so King useful. He had only fought with these ancient heavenly talents a few times, but he had already comprehended so much, which might increase his combat power several times. Was there anything better than this in the world? Han Fei punched again, shattering the axe light. At the same time, he used the draw technique. This time, he slashed a little slower. Because when he slashed out, the wave-breaking knife array appeared. With this slash, Han Fei clearly felt that the power of the draw technique directly broke through the shackles. The power of this slash was 80% stronger. On the one hand, it was the power of willpower, and on the other hand, it was the power of the wave-breaking knife array. Of course, because this was the ideal palace, Han Fei didn't have to worry about the consumption of spiritual energy at all. If he were in the outside world, drawing or slashing out an array with all his strength when he drew the knife would require spiritual energy, so it would be difficult for him to increase his strength so much. However, this was for others. The upper limit of their spiritual energy was limited. But did he have it? No. This meant that even in the outside world, as long as his spiritual chi was replenished fast enough, he could still obtain an increase of nearly 80% of his strength. This was not as simple as 1 + 1 + 2. It was like a clash between 20 waves of strength and 36 waves of strength. The former would definitely be blasted to smithereens. Swoosh! Gotcha! The ancient spirit gatherer resisted Han Fei's attack with a defense array. Unfortunately, Han Fei's strength had increased too much. The defense array was directly smashed, the axe exploded, and the spirit gatherer was cut in half. Han Fei grinned and looked at his hands. If he could comprehend all these before entering the monster plant soul realm, then why would he be afraid of Chu Qinyan and the others? If nothing unexpected happened, Yang Nanshi and the others would have more or less comprehended something here. This was also one of the reasons why the disciples of the Thousand-Star City were more powerful than ordinary heavenly talents. However, none of them was a spirit gatherer. Therefore, it was obvious that they would not feel the same way as him. At most, they could only comprehend the power of willpower or the power of domain. For example, Yang Nanshi's sledgehammer, in Han Fei's opinion, might not be a combat skill at all, but a manifestation of her will. So that's how it is. I was wondering why those people were so strong. It turns out that there are so many secrets in it. Han Fei suppressed the joy in his heart and soon regained his composure. Because he knew that all this was only temporary. Once they reached the explorer realm, they would absorb spiritual energy and energy from the void while fighting. At that time, everything that he had comprehended now would be available to them. Therefore, these insights could help him become stronger in the law enforcer realm. Once he faced an explorer, he would still be blasted to pieces. However, Han Fei didn't panic at all. It was enough to break through the law enforcer realm first. When he became an explorer, it might even involve the Great Tao. At that time, new forces might appear. As for himself, it was possible that he would have a new understanding. Thinking of this, Han Fei found that this trip was really worth it. He hadn't reached the end of the immortal soul realm, but he had already comprehended and learned so many things, which was already very profitable. In particular, this ancient spirit gatherer really gave him a big surprise and taught him another way to use arrays. As long as the speed of drawing arrays was fast enough, the power of a spirit gatherer could actually be terrifying. After this battle, Han Fei was full of confidence. He felt that with his current strength, he might be able to break through the immortal soul realm. Logically speaking, this golden bone jar was already very difficult. For ordinary people, if they encountered a spirit gatherer like Han Fei or the ancient spirit gatherer just now, they might not even be able to move an inch. They didn't even know how to fight and were directly trapped and killed by the killing array drawn by the ancient spirit gatherer. In terms of comprehensive strength, Han Fei felt that this ancient spirit gatherer should be stronger than the three he had met before. Han Fei moved all the way forward. Different from before, he encountered 3 more golden bone jars along the way. Originally, he wanted to go around them, because Han Fei felt that the golden bone jars might only teach him some things other than combat skills, such as willpower, domain, artistic conception, and so on. But when Han Fei just wanted to go around them, he found that once he passed the golden bone jar closest to him, the jar began to move and someone would come out of it. However, since Han Fei had comprehended willpower and mastered the new use of arrays, the golden bone jar could no longer stop him. And at this moment, Han Fei also saw the towering thing. Originally, he thought it was the remains of a broken building. But looking at it now, it was not a building at all. It was a rhombus-shaped tower about 200 meters tall. On the side facing Han Fei, there were 6 big words, "Monument to the Homeless." Monument. Han Fei pondered for a while. It seemed that the people here were all strong masters who had died in battle. Based on his intuition, if he wanted to walk to this monument, he had to at least be in the top 10 of the heavenly talent list. It was basically impossible to bypass the golden bone jar. But if he used the tactic of overwhelming people, he could actually reach here. However, the sacrifice might be very heavy. Another way was to gather the heavenly talents and hunt the ancient heavenly talents in the golden bone jar. With the personalities of those big clans, it was impossible that they hadn't thought of this. Maybe they had tried, but they certainly didn't succeed. Otherwise, on the stone tablet outside the soul realm, their names would definitely be on it, and in a very high position. Under this monument, in the shape of a pentagon, there were 5 crystal bone jars. At first glance, Han Fei knew they were extraordinary. The golden bone jar in front of him was already so powerful. How strong would the characters in these crystal bone jars be? Han Fei stopped and didn't dare to go forward directly. The main reason was that the 5 jars were too close to each other. He was afraid that if he got a little closer, 5 people would come out at once. What if another perfect combination appeared for him? Oh my God, if 5 super heavenly talents jumped out at once, Han Fei felt that he might not be able to resist them. For example, if 5 golden bone jars were placed in front of him and 5 ancient heavenly talents jumped out, the picture would be so beautiful that he didn't even dare to imagine it. Han Fei pondered for a moment. Should I go back to find Xiaobai and the others? Or should I move forward and see? Move forward a little? If 5 really came out, then I'll run away. If only 1 came out, well, I can consider giving it a try. With this idea in mind, Han Fei stretched out a foot wretchedly and moved forward. 1 step, 2 step. After walking about 100 steps, he was only 100 meters away from the monument, but the jars didn't move at all. Huh? Are they broken? Suddenly, Han Fei had just lifted 1 foot, but he stepped on nothing. Hiss! Han Fei wanted to run immediately. This was not a matter of invincibility. This was a strategic retreat. Let's retreat and see the situation first. However, when Han Fei looked back, he found that the scene had completely changed. Around him, there were desolate tombs everywhere, and skeletons were piled up everywhere. Where was the way he came from? F***ck. Suddenly, Han Fei felt that someone was staring at him, and he quickly looked back. What he saw made his scalp go numb. Because under the monument, there were 5 young people smiling at him. Yes, they were smiling. Aren't these F***king corpses? Shouldn't they all be expressionless and have hollow eyes? Why are you smiling at me? What do you mean? 5 people, 3 men and 2 women, some carrying armor boxes, some carrying daggers, and some holding sticks. It's over. Why don't they follow the rules? At this moment, information appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Guardian Corpse. Introduction: An ancient master died and left a wisp of his soul, which was refined into a corpse puppet by other masters. He retained very few memories and turned into an undead creature. Guardian corpses exist to guard the spirit and are all undead creatures who voluntarily reincarnate. Their strength is retained at the peak of their life. Those who are not human will be killed. Level 59 Quality: Undead. Contains spiritual energy, none collectible, none unabsorbable. When he read this introduction, Han Fei couldn't help but be a little moved. Isn't this a tomb guard? Usually, they chose to guard the tomb because of something they couldn't give up. Otherwise, who would be willing to guard the tomb for a lifetime? However, there was a sentence in the introduction: those who are not human will be killed. That was a bit interesting. I'm a human. So, these guardian corpses won't really kill me? Just when Han Fei was hesitating whether to fight or not, suddenly, one of the guardian corpses spoke. The spirit gatherer said, "Humans can't die. Only if you defeat us can you worship us." Third update. Asking for votes. No more updates today. Tomorrow. Hope you can vote for me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1065. Han Fei smiled awkwardly. "Hi," Han Fei said with a smile. "Do you still remember?" In the end, none of them answered him. Instead, they each got into a formation. Han Fei sighed. It turns out that a smile doesn't mean friendliness. However, it's not bad that these people won't fight with humans to the death. Otherwise, he would have to find a way to inform Luo Xiaobai and the others. As for the worship, it should be to worship this monument, right? Han Fei seemed to understand something. In fact, the main purpose of the Undying Soul Realm was this monument, right? So, there would be corresponding benefits after worshipping the monument? But on second thought, Han Fei felt that something was wrong. Although it was difficult to walk through the golden bone pot, It was definitely passable. No matter how powerful this group of 5 was, there were only 5 people. There were more than just the top 10 heavenly talents in the ideal palace. Outside the top 10, there must be many talents. Couldn't they defeat these 5 people? Han Fei didn't dare to neglect. He activated the devil change, chewed peppermint leaves in his mouth, and opened the yin-yang divine eyes. He took a step forward, and the golden giant transformed by the invincible will appeared. As a veteran of fighting, Han Fei naturally wouldn't make the lowest mistake of underestimating the enemy. He stepped on the ground, the 6 spirit armor covered his body, and the void lines floated out. With a swish, Han Fei disappeared. At the moment when Han Fei moved, the opponent's hunter had already disappeared. The manipulator raised her hands, and a towering tree rose from the ground behind her. Thousands of tendrils were like steel ropes, like long black iron whips, lashing at the void with crackling sounds. Bam! The armorist smashed the box on the ground. The box opened, and thousands of streaks of light swept across the sky like streams of light. The spirit gatherer raised her foot, and a series of small arrays quickly lit up one after another, and the prototype of a large array appeared in an instant. As for the soul warrior, with himself as the center, air waves surged wildly, as if a small universe had burst out. The long rod in his hand was as hot as a heavenly fire. On the surrounding ground, stones flew into the air. Shoot! Han Fei was stunned. Are you kidding me? Gulp! Han Fei swallowed. His first thought was that these people couldn't have been hidden fishers when they were alive. He didn't know about the others, but as for the spirit gatherer, he didn't know what he was doing. He was obviously holding a machine gun and firing wildly. Every time a bullet was fired, it was equivalent to opening a formation. This speed is at least twice as fast as that of the spirit gatherer I just met, right? Also, why do I feel that the soul warrior is even more powerful than Tengu when he goes all out? As for the manipulator, are you even a manipulator? 100-meter-tall tree appeared in an instant. He wondered how Luo Xiaobai would react if she saw it. As for the armorist, it was needless to say. The speed at which he attacked was like a rainbow, covering the sun and the sky. Was he an armorist? Without thinking too much, Han Fei suddenly felt that a cold light suddenly appeared next to his neck. Hiss! So fast? Whoosh! Han Fei suddenly disappeared. However, the moment he appeared, he felt as if the cold light was following him like a shadow, as if it was sticking to him at all times. F***ck, you can keep up with my flashing speed? Han Fei's eyes turned cold, and a golden shield appeared in front of him, and the golden giant transformed by the invincible will blocked in front of him. Buzz! As the flames flickered, Han Fei immediately felt that there was a sharp metal aura erupting in the cerebellum behind him. Crack! The 6 spirit armor shattered, and the golden giant slapped it with one hand, but the figure had already disappeared. Swish! 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 Countless steel ropes, like thousands of arrows, arrived in an instant. At the same time, thousands of rainbows suddenly fell like rain. Han Fei was shocked. What the F***ck is this cooperation? It's too fast. It was so fast that Han Fei almost couldn't react. Han Fei's body was like a phantom, drifting between the countless steel ropes and rainbows. From time to time, the blood-drinking knife blocked, and its body was almost twisted like a fried dough twist. At that moment, Han Fei didn't even consider deliberately using the 64-dimensional fish dragon dance. Because this scene was too fierce and the battle efficiency was too fast. Han Fei used the fish dragon dance to its peak subconsciously. Clank, 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 million knife art. The infinity water suddenly appeared, spinning crazily around Han Fei, and directly surrounded him into a storm of knife waves. The void lines retracted and directly clasped at the elusive hunter who couldn't be seen at all. Bam! The infinity knife art burst into pieces. An incomparably huge rod shadow struck across the sky, like a small mountain crashing down, directly smashing the million-knife art into pieces. And at that moment, hundreds of arrays were launched at the same time, and the illusory scenes of knives, spears, swords, and halberds flashed faster than lightning in front of Han Fei. F***ck. Han Fei was stunned. Why didn't the big families arrange for people to come to the immortal soul realm together? Such an attack? In an instant, those whose strength was lower than the top 10 heavenly talents were basically killed. Even though Han Fei had tried his best, he could barely dodge the attack. If the strength of hidden fishers was at this level, which ancient human being could defeat them? Han Fei didn't believe it. If they all had this kind of strength, ancient human beings might have been able to fight their way to the sea demon's nest. Explode. Han Fei didn't hesitate to explode the infinity water, directly hitting dozens of small arrays, and directly shattering the steel chains and vines. With a flip of his hand, he used the draw technique, and clenched his other hand into a fist, punching the air with the Nine Mansions dragon roar. Rumble! As soon as the explosion started, the 1,000 rainbow sword shadows seemed to turn into rays of light, directly cutting Han Fei and the golden giant. Clank, clank, clank in midair, Han Fei sensed the cold light again, knowing that the hunter was coming. With a flip of his palm, the law of gravity descended, and he directly used the highest level of the law of gravity, random gravity. Han Fei's body rolled in midair, and dozens of steel chains had been buckled on the ground, trying to catch him directly. Swish! Han Fei flashed 100 meters away, his back covered in cold sweat. Perfect, it's too perfect. After only 3 seconds of contact, Han Fei felt a chill on his back, as if he had experienced a fierce battle. He had used all of his trump cards, and there were at least 20 or so ingenious combat skills that he had used in his attack. He had barely dodged the attacks of these people. Han Fei had to admit that in terms of teamwork, these 5 people's teamwork was even better than that of his 5 thugs. Even if Xia Shaochan was still in the team, the 5 of them shouldn't be able to achieve such a level of teamwork. At this moment the array reappeared. Han Fei's yin-yang divine eyes flashed, and the power of his soul directly destroyed the opponent's array. The void lines all retracted. Under this kind of rhythm, Han Fei was very sure that the void lines couldn't catch anyone at all. The only thing he could do was to deal with this hunter. As long as the opponent was close, he would have a chance. The neon glow spread. Han Fei didn't know what the armorist was. Could armor be used like this? Han Fei dodged again, deliberately exposing a flaw, and one of his legs was buckled by a vine. Sure enough, the cold light jumped out from his lower abdomen. Shoot, don't do that! Han Fei was shocked. He punched down, and the void lines spurted out. Suddenly, Han Fei found that his speed was 20% slower. Turned out that an array appeared under his feet, a deceleration array. Swish! Han Fei flashed out again. If he didn't dodge, would he be castrated? Swish! Swish! The million-knife art returned and surrounded Han Fei. Then, Han Fei saw the opponent's armorist disappear. And in the sky, a top-like fireball appeared and fell from the sky. On the other side, the Soul Warrior broke through the air and attacked. The shadow of the stick was thicker than the stone pillar transformed by the embroidery needle. Like a pillar supporting the sky, it smashed directly at Han Fei. At this moment, Han Fei really wanted to curse. Could this thing be dealt with by a single person? Ho! The law of gravity descended directly around his body. Han Fei clenched his fists, his eyes cold, and his anger suddenly rose. 2 sacrificing punches burst out at the same time, one blasting the sky and the other hitting the ground. His soul collided with the opponent's spirit gatherer, the million-knife art swept away the steel chains and vines, and the golden giant struck the void, trying to block the opponent's hunter. Han Fei felt that this battle was too difficult. Little did he know that outside the immortal soul realm, there was an uproar. On the stone tablet, Han Fei's name jumped directly to the 51st place. His rise was so great and his ranking was so high that it left people speechless. Some people from the big clans were shocked. How is it possible? He suddenly jumped to the 51st place? What the hell is going on with Han Fei? Someone was stunned. No, the other people from the Thug Academy must be there too. Since they are not on the list, it means that they have been defeated in the first round in the depths of the Immortal Soul Realm. Someone was suspicious. Could it be that Han Fei broke through alone? As soon as this remark came out, everyone looked at the person who spoke as if he were a fool. Are you kidding me? Although they didn't come in person, the top 10 heavenly talents had all broken through. Besides, some of the top 10 heavenly talents had broken through many times. Even so, Jiang Nanyu, who ranked the highest on the 7 Souls list, was only 59th. However, Han Fei suddenly became the 51st place? Didn't this mean that Han Fei was stronger than Jiang Nanyu? Some members of the Luo family secretly left to tell Luo Jiutian the news. People from the major families also left to spread the news. Wang Santai had turned into a young man at this moment. Seeing this scene, he felt his scalp go numb. What the hell is this guy? Although the Immortal Soul Realm is ranked the 2nd Soul Realm, this Soul Realm is extremely difficult. Yang Nanshi is strong enough, right? The Monster Plant Soul Realm is ranked 23rd, and the Blue Sea Soul Realm is ranked 26th. But what about the Immortal Soul Realm? Ranked 89th, almost not on the list. What does this mean? As for those ordinary people, they could only sigh. This ideal palace is probably going to have a monster. Number 1. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1066. While the outside world was talking about it, Han Fei's scalp went numb. Or rather, this was not a fight at all. If it weren't for the fact that he had enough trump cards, he would have been knocked down countless times by now. However, Han Fei keenly noticed that a stone tablet had appeared in the void, but unfortunately, he didn't have time to look at it now. Little Fatty had been attached to him, and his strength had increased a little. If he could, Han Fei would definitely attach Little Gold to him too. But with the phantom glass wings, there was nothing Han Fei could do. Under this monument, Han Fei couldn't be seen at all. Endless steel chains pierced this area like a hedgehog. The neon light almost covered this area within thousands of meters. In that illusory void, apart from the sounds of weapons clashing, nothing else could be seen. Now, Han Fei only felt that every second was very exciting. He had been sneak attacked by the hunter hundreds of times, but the void lines didn't catch him even once. It was not because the void lines didn't work, but because the opponent's spirit gatherer was too annoying. Han Fei felt that even if old Jiang was here, he might not be faster than this person. Boom, boom, boom. Clang, clang. Clang, clang. After half an hour, Han Fei's soul power and body reaction rhythm had reached a perfect level. In fact, through the yin-yang eyes, Han Fei could still see the weaknesses of these 5 people. For example, this hunter seemed to be able to flash through the void like Chu Linyuan and attack in the void. The void here was not the space Han Fei was seeing now, but the real void. It was another space outside the current space. But every time this hunter appeared, there would be a void shock. Although the shock was extremely fast. However, if Han Fei was given a chance to fight her one-on-one, he would definitely be able to defeat her. However, as a perfect combination, these people must be very clear about their own strengths and weaknesses. Even if everyone had their own weaknesses, they would be able to eliminate these weaknesses through mutual cooperation. Han Fei felt very uncomfortable at this moment and was highly concentrated. Under his feet, in mid-air, in the void cracks, steel chains and vines, he seemed to be in a storm. However, from the shock at the beginning to now, Han Fei had managed to adapt to it. He had fought Luo Xiaobai and the others before. However, it was already very early in the morning. After Xia Xiaochan left, they rarely sparred with each other. But at this moment, that long-lost feeling came to his mind. Even with the protection of the yin-yang divine eyes and the super-strong soul, Han Fei was inevitably attacked. This was because not all attacks could be dodged. Some attacks could only be dodged. You could dodge one, but not the second. As a result, Han Fei's close-range combat skills were brought into full play. Almost every 3 seconds, Han Fei had to change between at least 7 or 8 kinds of footwork. Han Fei had to pay attention to the state of his muscles almost every second. He knew when he needed to borrow strength, when he needed to move slightly, and when he had to dodge. After fighting for half an hour, Han Fei felt numb. Although his body was already drenched in blood, he did not panic at all. In fact, he even entered a rather wondrous state. At this time, Han Fei was slightly sluggish, and his body would subconsciously react according to the source of the crisis. And on the void stone tablet, Han Fei's name was rising rapidly. At this moment it had jumped to 18th place. In the outside world, it caused an uproar, and everyone was horrified when they heard it. 1 hour later, Han Fei's name had already appeared in the 6th place. In the outside world, Chu Qinyan and the others had already arrived. At this moment, they all looked solemn. Yang Nanshi said, "Can he fight to the 6th place in that place?" Sun Wu gritted her teeth and said, "Actually, this time, we should have taken action." Chu Qinyan shook his head. "It's not the right time. The undead soul realm is different from other soul realms. The undead creatures there don't attack selectively, but attack indiscriminately. If we can't take him there, even if we go to that place, how many people do you think can resist the joint attack of those 5 people?" Li Xian looked at the stone tablet and was silent for a while. "I underestimated him. Whether they have the help of other people from the Thug Academy or not, this result has already proved their strength. The people from the Thug Academy really can't be underestimated. I won't get involved in this matter for the time being." Sun Wu immediately squinted at him. "At this point, do you really think you won't get involved?" Li Xian sneered. "Even Zhang Mingquan didn't come. That guy must have expected this. Don't forget what realm we are in now. We are peak-level hidden fishers. We can't use the power of laws. At this realm, knowing that we are no match for them, but still going to court death, is there any difference between us and fools?" Chu Qinyan said, "This time, 5th Glimmer and Luo Jiotian are not here." Li Xian sneered. "So what? They have already passed the undead soul realm. Do you think their strength will still be the same as the monster plant soul realm after they come out?" This question made Chu Qinyan and Yang Nanshi's faces darken. Indeed, the monster plant soul realm was just about fighting monster plants, while the undead soul realm was about honing the extreme of combat skills. When one reached the extreme, it was comprehension. They had all benefited a lot from this place, and their strength had been greatly improved. Han Fei and the others were not fools. How could they come here without gaining anything? Just when Li Xian was about to leave and everyone was thinking about countermeasures, a disciple of the Chu sect suddenly came to Chu Qinyan and said, "Miss, Chao Qiu has entered the ideal palace." Everyone was taken aback, and then their faces darkened. Chu Qinyan immediately said, "Chao Qiu alone?" The man said, "Chao Tian and Chao Jiaran also came in. However, the 3 of them didn't go together. Chao Qiu went to the monster plant soul realm alone." Seeing that Chu Qinyan didn't speak, the man said, "Miss, do you want to?" Chu Qinyan glanced at the man. "Do you think you can deal with someone who has awakened the bloodline of the god of war with ordinary means?" Chu Qinyan said, "Let's go. Don't trouble them before the 5th soul realm." Han Fei didn't even have a chance to use the divine healing technique on himself. However, he suddenly found that something was wrong. He found that the cooperation of these 5 people was so exquisite that his void lines could only protect him but not attack. But it was this ingenuity that made him suspicious. They seem to be extremely strong, but they are not beyond the scope of the so-called top heavenly talent. The fluctuation of their combat power is too small. They seemed to have borrowed a kind of power. Boom! Han Fei burst out the infinity water and cast the divine healing technique on himself, observing these people from all angles. Then, in the neon glow, he felt that there seemed to be invisible lines swaying slightly in the void. Huh! What's that? There was a strange light blooming in Han Fei's eyes. He condensed his will and guarded himself, trying to take a break. Han Fei's eyes quickly penetrated the layers of neon mist and vaguely perceived a trace of the veins between heaven and earth. From the monument, it was directly connected to the 5 people. Just like the void lines, if Han Fei hadn't felt that there seemed to be something wrong with the strength of these people, even with the yin-yang divine eyes, he might not have noticed it. Is it the monument that gives them the power? Han Fei was shocked. No wonder, after fighting for so long, he was just struggling and couldn't hurt any of these 5 people at all. If they really had such aptitudes, didn't it mean that these 5 people all had the potential to become kings? After all, when he faced Chun Huangdian, he didn't even have such a wonderful feeling. Even if these 5 people's aptitudes were slightly lower than Chun Huangdian's, they definitely had the potential to become kings. The ancient masters couldn't even protect them. How could they be killed so easily? Swish, swish, swish. Han Fei made up his mind and began to flash crazily, and the hunter that followed him like a shadow needed exactly this kind of flash. Because the moment he flashed, Han Fei's biggest flaw was crack. Han Fei's 6 spirits' armor was broken again, and his body was stabbed in the lower abdomen by a knife. And the enemy certainly wouldn't take the opportunity to stop. The Soul Warrior's body was like a firework, and thousands of rod shadows broke through the void and hit Han Fei instantly. At the moment Han Fei flew out, the steel vines in the void grabbed him and dragged him to the tree. At that moment, seeing the armorist smashing at him like a meteorite, Han Fei issued a thought, and a terrifying electric current broke through the air. Sizzle! Little gold leaped, and the lightning blade directly bombarded the vein of nothingness in the void. Although he was injured, it was worth it. Han Fei stalled the 3 of them at once. The spirit gatherer was on the ground, so the armorist in the sky was the best breakthrough point. At the moment the lightning blade was blasted out, the infinity water turned into thousands of flying knives and swept directly at the manipulator. However, the direction of the sweeping suddenly changed and hit the void. Crack! A slight cracking sound appeared. At that moment, the armorist and the manipulator in the sky turned into nothingness and disappeared. And on the void steel, Han Fei's name suddenly rushed from the 6th to the 2nd place. Han Fei's name even wanted to compete for the 1st place. However, after trying several times, he failed and finally fell to the 2nd place. Han Fei landed, and the coiled turtle array under his feet and the invincible golden body burst out clanging sounds. That was the result of Han Fei falling into the killing array of the spirit gatherers. Han Fei had already made a big profit by getting the 2 enemies to disappear with a moderate injury. When the neon lights and the thousands of steel vines disappeared, the surroundings became empty again. However, Han Fei didn't dare to be careless. Although he killed 2 enemies, he was trapped in the array, and the danger was not reduced. Humph! Do you think I don't know arrays? 2nd. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1067. At first, old Jiang didn't give Han Fei the boundless alchemy scripture, but the spirit-gathering scripture. That was right. With Han Fei's character, how could he have the time to study alchemy every day? He couldn't even fight back. And the spirit-gathering scripture, with old Han's guidance, was supplemented by the ocean book. In fact, what Han Fei lacked in arrays was not the means of setting them, but time to familiarize himself with them. Once Han Fei was given enough time to consolidate and use these arrays, Han Fei was confident that his achievements in arrays would at least be comparable to old Zhang's in the future. It would be a piece of cake for him to trap and kill law enforcers easily. In the past, old Jiang would always set up some arrays in the twisted jungle for Han Fei to break. Now, he encountered an actual battle. Because Han Fei's choice just now gave the enemy spirit gatherer time to repair the arrays. As soon as the arrays were activated, the power of the spirit gatherer was revealed. At this moment, Han Fei seemed to be in an illusion. He couldn't see the enemy hunter, the soul warrior, or the spirit gatherer. What surrounded Han Fei was more intense knife light and sword shadows than the million knife art. Some of those terrifying attacks emerged from the ground, some stretched out from the void, and some turned from illusion to reality. Swish! In the midst of the thousands of attacks, a sudden flash of light flashed. Han Fei immediately turned around and punched, shattering the fatal knife attack of the elusive hunter. Bam! As soon as he shattered this attack, Han Fei felt a huge force falling on his body. He was directly blasted away by a stick and crushed on the ground. Bam! The terrifying force blasted Han Fei and directly cracked a defensive array. During the period when he was blasted away, nearly 100 attacks fell on him, and Han Fei's injury became more serious. However, Han Fei still didn't panic. As he stepped on the ground, a series of coiled turtle arrays emerged one after another. However, as soon as the sixth array appeared, one of them suddenly exploded. It turned out that the enemy spirit gatherer was competing with him for the right to carve arrays. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. This was what he had been waiting for. At this moment, although there were shadows of sticks, daggers, and thousands of swords, Han Fei suddenly scattered the void lines in all directions. Of course, Han Fei was not trying to seduce them, but to scare them away and buy himself some time. Although the time was very short, Han Fei had already imagined a large amount of spiritual energy out of thin air and blasted it into the ground. Boom! The ground began to shake violently. This was a way of farming. There were so many plantations in the Thug Academy, so they naturally couldn't be watered bit by bit. One-time watering was Han Fei's usual method. When the spiritual energy on the ground exploded, the array formation on the ground began to destabilize. The opponent's spirit gatherer was forced to stabilize the array and continue to output spiritual energy. At this moment, it was time for Han Fei to break the array. The law of gravity descended, and the 10,000 knife stream surged with spiritual energy, like an all-piercing armor. Crack! Han Fei drilled a hole in the array. As soon as Han Fei appeared, he flashed almost at the same time as the hunter. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Without the manipulator and armorist, a hunter couldn't stop him. Seeing Han Fei rushing over, the opponent's spirit gatherer immediately retreated, choosing to give up the array and set up another array for himself. Ha! Want to run? Drawl, the third void line was cut off by Han Fei, and the spirit gatherer's escaping figure came to an abrupt stop. Han Fei sneered and stopped. The opponent's hunter slashed at his neck with a knife. However, just when the opponent was about to succeed, Han Fei's body suddenly paused. Han Fei tilted his head, grabbed at the void with one hand, and directly grabbed the hunter out. Without the protection of the spirit gatherer, how can you block my void lines? After breaking the hunter's void lines, only the soul warrior was left of the 5 top heavenly talents. And on the void steel, Han Fei's name rose again and hung at the top of the list. Han Fei twisted his head, put away the infinity water and the blood-drinking knife, and a rusty stick appeared in his hand. What was it if not the embroidery needle? Han Fei grinned. The combination has been broken. You are no longer perfect. I'm going to win this battle. Outside. First, he's first again. Oh my god of the sea! What kind of monster is this Han Fei? He can even be the first in the undying soul realm? There's going to be a good show. No wonder the Thug Academy wants to return. Such a heavenly talent is hard to come by in 1,000 years, isn't it? This time, the big clans are going to have a lot of fun. First in both lists, this Han Fei is probably even more talented than Jiang Nanyu. Chu Qingyan and the others had already left, but they had already received the news on the way. Yang Nanshi exclaimed, "First? Someone said awkwardly, yes. Chu Qingyan narrowed his eyes. Only Han Fei? The man nodded. Only one person. None of the other 4 are on the list. Chu Qingyan instructed, Fifth Soul Realm, find a way to get Han Fei and the other 4 away. Just kill him. Don't worry about the others. Yang Nanshi licked her lip. He's really a powerful guy. I'd like to see what kind of opportunity he got in the Undying Soul Realm. He's actually ranked first. Sun Wu's eyes flickered and she thought, Han Fei must die. Such a monster, if he didn't die and had such a deep hatred with the Sun family, he would definitely become a great enemy of the Sun family in the future. In the Undying Soul Realm, Han Fei panted slightly. In close combat, it took him more than half an hour to kill this soul warrior. Just this ability alone made him much stronger than Chu Kuangren, whom they had met previously. At this moment, Han Fei cast a few divine healing techniques on himself and came to the monument. Looking up, for some reason, he was a little moved. He didn't know if it was because this monument was worthy of respect, or the monument itself could give people a sense of solemnity. Anyway, when Han Fei looked up, he always felt that he was very small. Han Fei thought of what those people said before, only by defeating them can you pay your respects. Han Fei pondered for a while and bowed deeply to the monument 3 times. After all, they were human heavenly talents who died in battle. It was both a memorial and a fight to protect mankind. These people were indeed worthy of respect. After Han Fei bowed 3 times, suddenly, the top of the tower shone with golden light, as if a decree had descended from the void. A golden page slowly fell in the golden light and fell into Han Fei's hand. This thing again? Han Fei reached out and took the golden page. What greeted his eyes were strange and incomprehensible lines, but no words. What the hell is this? The opportunity of the 7 soul realms? Doesn't that mean that every soul realm will have a golden page? Han Fei couldn't help but think, this is only the 2nd soul realm. There are still 5 more. This is a bit difficult to deal with. Just against the 5 people just now, Han Fei was confident that if it were before, he would not be able to defeat them at all without comprehending the invincible will and the magic of arrays. Even if he could hold on for a while, he would almost certainly be defeated within 100 breaths. After all, the slightest mistake could make a big difference. One careless move and the whole game would be lost. After looking at the golden page for a moment, under Han Fei's naked eye, the golden page slowly faded again and sank into his body. However, although the golden page disappeared, the golden light on the monument was still there and hadn't faded. In the haze, Han Fei seemed to see an illusory picture, as if it was reflected from the monument and fell into Han Fei's eyes. The picture appeared in a corner of the city gate of a giant bluestone city, but it didn't show the appearance of the city. In Han Fei's field of vision, there were monstrous waves, giant turtles lying on the sea, and octopus tentacles stretching straight into the sky. The red light of the 100-meter-long sword Qi was like a red glow, and there were many strong masters. That was the picture in the distance, and nearby, the light of spiritual energy was surging, and various colors of light were spreading under the city. Every ray of multicolored light was produced by a single person in battle. In the waves, shrimp soldiers raised their spears, crab generals carried hammers, and insect armies raged. In this smoky battlefield, Han Fei's eyes directly found the group of 5 people fighting with him among the thousands of people. However, what he saw was not a picture of how powerful they were. Instead, it was the picture of the 5 of them walking together, resisting thousands of enemies, and dying bravely. Because the moment Han Fei saw them, the 5 of them were covered in blood. The manipulator's tree spiritual plant had been mostly bald. The armorist's armor box had been lost, and he was holding 2 knives in his hands, looking brave and fearless. The soul warrior took the lead and swept with his rod. And the spirit gatherer seemed to have exhausted his spiritual energy. The hunter woman was responsible for protecting him. but one of the hunter's arms had been broken. At that moment, the 5 of them seemed to be talking about something. Suddenly, they slowly turned their heads, looked in Han Fei's direction, and grinned. There seemed to be a hint of freedom, helplessness, and a trace of nostalgia. In the next moment, the waves were overturned, and the 5 of them disappeared in the waves, never to be seen again. Han Fei was quite moved by what he saw. Dying bravely, turning around and smiling. He couldn't help but remember the scene when he first saw the 5 of them, and they were all smiling. The last scene in Han Fei's eyes was no longer the 5 of them, but everyone on this battlefield. Suddenly, a wisp of misty white light emerged from their bodies. The white light converged towards the sky, and a huge hand crossed half of the city, stretched out a finger in the air, and wrote the word, human. Under Han Fei's eyes, his consciousness shrank, as if the amazing power that erupted from the word, human, had pierced his mind. With one word, all the waves were shattered. That was not the power of one person, but the white light emitting from the bodies of countless people, which was how the word, human, was written. All the way to the end of his vision. The scene ended here. The scene in his eyes disappeared, but Han Fei didn't move for a long time. After a long time, Han Fei slowly exhaled. The power of the human race. The 3rd chapter. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1068. Han Fei's heart was a little heavy. What on earth did human beings experience in the Age of Doom? Han Fei had seen this scene in the heavenly desolate city. In the end, even dangling fishers had to fight, fearlessly and bravely. And now, this monument to the homeless, let's call it the graveyard of the homeless. It also witnessed the same history. If the heavenly desolate city fell, then which city did the graveyard of the homeless fall? At least, it was certain that both the heavenly desolate city and the unknown graveyard of the homeless should have collapsed at about the same time. Human beings fought with all their might. In the end, no one knew who turned the tide and created the floating island, so that human beings could survive and slowly recover to this day. The price is greater than I thought. Han Fei couldn't help sighing. How many places like the heavenly desolate city and the graveyard of the homeless were there? Han Fei's heart trembled slightly. An entire city of living beings perished in battle. How many people would that be? At this moment, Han Fei was even more curious about the Age of Doom. Could humans and the Sea Clan really not get along peacefully? Old Shu Shan once said that humans, the Sea Clan, and the demonic plants once had a harmonious relationship. When was it? What he was more curious about was how much hatred could make humans and the Sea Clan hate each other to such an extent. Could they ignore the lives of billions of creatures? Han Fei felt that no matter how bad he was, he couldn't do such a thing. Not only humans, but also sea demons, demonic plants, and all creatures had feelings. Even sea demons themselves had feelings for each other. Every creature was an independent individual. There would be love, sorrow, joy, and joy in their lives. What was worth sacrificing everything for? Han Fei clenched his fists and suddenly felt the golden brilliance on the monument converge. When he looked back again, he had already returned to the outside world. Under the monument, the 5 crystal bone jars were still standing quietly, motionless. But at this moment, in Han Fei's eyes, the 5 bone jars were 5 tomb keepers. They fought to the death when they were alive, and their souls were immortal after death, watching the world quietly. Alas! Han Fei bowed to the monument to the homeless 3 times again, and then turned his head and left. He guessed that the last scene he saw was definitely not meaningless. Perhaps the greatest significance was to warn the future generations of mankind. Once upon a time there was a group of ancestors, young and old, who used their blood and lives to protect the continuation of human civilization. Even now, this will still exists to protect the human race. For some reason, Han Fei felt that he had overlooked something. At this moment, Han Fei was full of urgency. The battle between the Scattered Stars Island and the 10,000 Demon Valley was inevitable and close at hand. Behind the scattered stars island was the 1,000-star city, and behind the 10,000 demon valley was the sea demon capital. At that time, if a great war really broke out again, how many people would have to die? A sense of pride suddenly rose from Han Fei's heart. No matter what, he had to become stronger. In this world, only the strong could change the situation and settle a war. He couldn't see that far. All he could see was the Great War 7 years later. The funny thing was that the big clans in the 1,000-star city were still fighting among themselves over the search for the immortal palace. Little did they know that once the sea monsters obtained the king's remains, they would face an even more terrifying consequence. At the very least, this concerned the safety of Yin Yang Heaven. It didn't take him long to find Luo Xiaobai and the others. In fact, the 4 of them were already very close to the graveyard of the Headless. However, when he saw them this time, he found that the 4 of them seemed to have changed. The one who noticed the problem at first glance was Lu Renquang. Han Fei remembered that just now, this guy was still using infinite defense to block other people's attack. But at this moment, the 4 of them were all wearing a layer of dark blue gilded armor and were fighting 2 ancient heavenly talents. Han Fei remembered that Lu Renquang had an armor-covering combat skill, but the quality of that combat skill was equivalent to his 6 spirits armor formation, not very useful. However, one look was enough to tell that this dark blue armor was extraordinary. Zhang Xuanyu and the Soul Warrior collided, and water ripples appeared on the armor, and most of the force was offset. In addition, Lu Renquang's sky-swallowing technique changed into a big mouth. A big mouth full of sharp teeth, like a ferocious giant mouth, had a stronger suction force, and now it actively swallowed. In the void, there were bursting fruits being swallowed by the big mouth. As for Zhang Xuanyu's change, Han Fei was a little shocked. His momentary time seemed to have changed too. He was so far away that the spear light didn't seem to be extended at all, but in fact, the spear had already fallen on the opponent's body. F***ck, he froze time? Han Fei was a little horrified. Zhang Xuanyu actually froze time in the extreme range? How did he do this? Clearly, outside the range of the spear light, the flow of time was normal, and no one was affected. But where the spear light pointed, time was frozen. In other words, the enemy had been hit before they knew that Zhang Xuanyu had shot out the spear. And Luo Xiaobai didn't seem to have changed much. It seemed that the speed at which she summoned spiritual plants had become faster. It seemed that whatever creature she wanted, she could summon it with a thought. This should be the power of the divine manipulator family. As for whether Luo Xiaobai had comprehended anything, Han Fei couldn't see it at all. As for Li Luoluo, she was still controlling the insect army. However, after those insects died, they seemed to be swallowed by other insects and then mutated a little. At this time, Lu Renquang had easily swallowed the manipulator's infinity fruit. Zhang Xuanyu stabbed one person to death with a spear attack, and then cooperated with Luo Xiaobai's trap and Li Luoluo's entanglement. Another spear attack, and another person was stabbed to death. Seeing this, Han Fei was slightly relieved. Zhang Xuanyu's time freeze was not unbreakable. He needed time to prepare. Although it seemed fierce, once he used this move, others would know it, and it would be impossible for them to wait for him to hit them. Besides, Zhang Xuanyu needed some time to prepare, and he also needed the assistance of others. Phew! I was scared to death. If he really used this weird spear technique in an instant, I'm afraid no one would be able to resist it. Everyone had already noticed Han Fei. At this moment, Zhang Xuanyu came up to Han Fei, put his arm around Han Fei's shoulder, and said, "Fei, am I handsome? Let me tell you, I was quick-witted at that time, exerted my potential to the extreme, and had an instant epiphany. This time you can't hide. Isn't it awesome?" Han Fei patted him on the shoulder and said, "I've already seen it. Basically, you can't poke me anymore. You'd better use this move to sneak attack others." Zhang Xuanyu, Lu Renquang chuckled. "What about me? I just discovered the enhanced version of the sky swallowing technique. And this armor, do you see it? Conservatively speaking, it is at least comparable to a semi-divine weapon. Han Fei thought for a while. Its quality is indeed comparable to a semi-divine weapon. However, in the outside world, it is not an ideal palace. Your strength is not enough to support it for a long time. Of course, it's not bad for you to use it alone. For a group of people like us, everyone has a divine battlesuit, so it's a bit useless. Lu Renquang. While Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renquang were embarrassed, Luo Xiaobai asked directly, "Why are you back?" Zhang Xuanyu immediately said, "Yes, didn't you run ahead of us? And you were gone for a long time? How about it? What did you comprehend?" Han Fei said, "You'll see what I comprehended later. However, you'd better go to the graveyard of the no-return first." Graveyard of the no-return? Li Luoluo pointed to the looming monument in the distance. "Is that it?" Han Fei nodded. "Yes, that's it." Li Luoluo asked, "Is it difficult to break through it?" Han Fei thought for a while, glanced at them, and said, "Very difficult." Luo Xiaobai and the others were shocked. Since Han Fei said the word, "very difficult," it could be seen that that place was definitely not to be underestimated. Luo Xiaobai immediately frowned. "Easy to die. Did you pass it?" Han Fei shrugged. "It's not easy to die. However, you'd better try it first." Han Fei watched Luo Xiaobai and the others enter the graveyard of the no-return with his own eyes. It was not that he didn't want to go in with them, but when Han Fei approached, Luo Xiaobai and the others disappeared. As for himself, he was left outside. It seemed that the graveyard of the no-return was no longer open to him. However, it was similar to what he had imagined. Within 10 minutes, Li Luoluo was out and appeared outside the graveyard of the no-return. However, Li Luoluo was seriously injured at this moment. As soon as she came out, she lay on the ground and her soul was unstable. Han Fei hurriedly cast the divine healing technique on her and asked in surprise, "Why are you injured?" After a while, Li Luoluo recovered a lot and looked at Han Fei in shock. "I was stabbed to death as soon as I went in. What kind of combination is that? How can a hidden fisher pass such a fierce battle?" Han Fei thought for a while and said, "Don't panic. Let's wait and see." Han Fei was puzzled. "Wait. Is it because I won so I didn't experience this kind of serious injury?" After about 10 minutes, Lu Renquang came out with a swish and looked at Han Fei in shock. "Fei, why didn't you come in? I can't beat them. My everlasting defense was forcefully destroyed." As soon as Lu Renquang said this, Zhang Xuanyu came out with a swish, looking dumbfounded. He looked as if he knew who he was, where he was, and what he was doing. Han Fei patted Zhang Xuanyu on the shoulder. Reality is cruel. I know you can't last 3 minutes without Fatty." Zhang Xuanyu was speechless. "I just want to know, how many did you kill?" "Anyway, I only killed one." Han Fei was stunned. "You killed one?" Lu Renquang's face trembled. "It was an opportunity created by me." As for Luo Xiaobai, it took her about 10 minutes to come out. The moment she came out, Luo Xiaobai took a deep breath. "I can't fight. I can only kill the opponent's manipulator." Immediately, everyone looked at Han Fei. Zhang Xuanyu asked, "How long did you last?" Han Fei suddenly grinned. "I passed." Everyone,